Well, happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome back to the FIDE Women's Speed Chess Championship. This is the fourth and final Grand Prix leg. So we know what's on the line. It is a chance to qualify for the super final. And we will start with 4 matches. Then after those 4 matches conclude, we will have the other 4 first-round matchups. And what is this all for? Let's look at the leaderboard right now to see who's in first place, who has chances to make it, because the top 2 qualify for the super final. And as you see here, Anna Ushanina, she has 22 points after 3 legs. She has guaranteed herself a trip to the super final because, as you'll note, the person in second place, or tied for second, Katerina Lachno, has played all 3 of her Grand Prix legs. You only play 3 legs. So that means Valentina Gunina can overtake her. And actually, I should walk that statement back. I cannot believe I just went that way because Alexandra Kosteniuk, if she wins first place and Valentina Gunina scores, it is possible for Anna Ushanina to be overtaken. It is unlikely at this point because everything has to go wrong for her and right for some other players, but it is possible. And you see the standings that all the way down to Yifan and Sarah Kanamalsharia, they have chances if they win this entire Grand Prix leg. So let's talk about what the format's like so it can fill some people in. I don't know where you've been, but let's just let you know what's been going on here. We started with 6 Swiss tournaments. The top 2 from each of those, after a knockout bracket, made it into the Women's Speed Chess Championship, where we've played this Grand Prix cycle. And what the format of the Grand Prix cycle has been is 4 legs. We are on a 4th and final one, where you play 3 of the 4. Your Grand Prix points are added up. And the legs have these segments: 30 minutes of 5 minutes plus 1 second increment, 30 minutes of 3 minutes and 1 second increment, and finally 10 minutes of 1 plus 1. But that's the nitty gritty. Let's go to the Grand Prix points and prizes, because this will determine who makes it to the super final. As you see here, with a first place finish, you get a cool $3,000, $3,000, not a bad payday, but very importantly, you get 12 points in the standings. Second place is 8, third, 6th, and so on. And so if we can pull our leaderboard back up one more time, and as you just keep in mind these points here, 12 points for first can allow Alexandra Kosteniuk to leapfrog Anna Ushanina, and Valentina Gunina there with 20 points. She just needs to make it to the semifinals, and she'll be able to leapfrog Ushanina as well. So there is a possibility that Anna Ushanina, despite her amazing performance so far, will not make it. Now, the schedule is, you know what day it is. Today's July 15th. Tomorrow's the 16th. We'll get the quarterfinals. Friday, we'll get the semis. And then last but not least, on Sunday, we will get the final of this leg. And reminder that the starting time is the same as today. That is 5:30 a.m. Eastern time. So you won't want to miss this. You know exactly what the schedule is like. It's in front of you. If you're not here for it, that's really not my fault at this point. I've told you all you need to know. And we are going to start in just a minute now with the action from this 4th Grand Prix leg of the Women's Speed Chess Championship. Welcome, everybody who may be new here. If you're returning, I'm sure you missed the show. I'm very glad to be back and covering this Women's Speed Chess Championship action. It's so fun for me. Just game after game is exciting. We've had some awesome tiebreakers. We've seen players come back from 3-game deficits in the bullet. It's just been a lot of fun, and fun will only continue here at chess.com. And I'm waiting confirmation to see when the action will take place. Of course, behind the scenes, our team's doing such an amazing job, from our producer, Arin, to the Fair Play team, who's making sure that the players are on the call, sharing their screens, and are on camera this whole time. So it's really cool to see that. And for a tiebreaker, we will have total game points. So you add up all of the game points throughout the Grand Prix leg. So that means actually dominating matchups. For instance, Alexandra Kosteniuk, if my memory serves me correctly, she won her first match 11-0. So racking up those points is really useful for the tiebreaks if the players end up with the same amount of Grand Prix points. So just waiting for another moment for the action. The team is working diligently just to make sure that all is set. And okay, just the first tiebreaker, I should say, is the number of first place finishes. And after that is the total number of game points. I should reframe that. But considering Ushanina won the first leg, Gunina won the second leg, Lucknow won the third. If we have a repeat winner, that person's already going to make it through, and we probably won't have any need for the tiebreak. So that first tiebreak, then we get the total game points. That's really where it gets critical. And games are incoming. I am excited. Cannot wait for this action to unfold, because really, when I look at these matchups, we have Yifan against her compatriot, Ning. We have Valentina Gunina taking on, games are already starting. So before I can even read out all the matchups, I'll just show you them on screen. And here we have a French defense. Everybody watching should know my feelings about this defense, because this bishop on c8 has no defense for what its prospects would look like. It is totally the player with the black piece's fault. The first move is e6, locking in that bishop. It is entombed there, will not have great prospects as the game continues. And look at Yifan. She plays knight f4. This knight may head to h5 at some moment, which puts pressure on g7, which tries to get all of her pieces on the king side. Of course, h4, h5 is thematic. You gain space on the king side where you have more control. Black's pieces have already been forced over more towards the queen side. Note this knight is on d7, started on g8, and then it went to f6 and was kicked out of there over to d7, knight on c6, bishop on c8. These pieces cannot regroup and head towards the king side to shelter that king, in which case white is smart to start putting pressure on that side of the board. And it's not immediate pressure. It's not like there's going to be a checkmate in a couple moves, but you just pose enough questions that your opponent has difficulty answering. And h4, h5 is one of those questions where do you play h6, or do you allow white to even push all the way down to h6 herself, causing just issue after issue for black. And the fact that she's spending time here either means that her connection is not holding up and she is struggling to, and actually as soon as I say that, she has one bar. That is a problem. So yeah, that's not going to be good. Going to be honest with you. One bar. She's actually offline right now. It says member offline. And Yifan similarly does not have a good connection. Both players, I guess, playing from China and having some issues here. But it looks like she's back. Oh, now she's at 4 full bars here. This has been something that the players are well aware of and have struggled with. And it's not just these two players. There have been disconnections. Katerina Lucknow suffered this in her bullet game against Yifan in the third Grand Prix leg. In that final game, she lost connection and ended up wasting a lot of time. And here, Queen A5 finally played, pinning this pawn on C3. That way, when I take on D4, you can't take back with your C pawn. You want this pawn chain. Look at that. That's a 4-pawn chain here. B2, C3, D4, E5. That looks great. Your pawns are protected. A pawn's best friend is another pawn, because it's the least valuable piece in terms of points. And that means it's harder for your opponent to capture that pawn as it is protected by another pawn. So if you can break the chain with C takes D4, you'll be a very happy camper. And so Yifan probably needs to interpose with a big move like bishop to D2, saying, wait, now when you take on D4, I can just take back with the pawn because my king is no longer on the other side of that. So let's hop on over to some other games. It is the first round of action. I'm seeing the game between Anna Muzychuk and Munkhzul Turmonk, and this game excites me because look at the move that was just played, bishop e6. Speaking of interposing here, that stops the rook from pinning the bishop on e7. Now this knight on g5 can be captured, which loses the bishop on e6. This is a wild affair. I mean, look at this position. I would not take with the bishop on g5. If I'm going to take on g5, I'm taking with the rook. And then after d takes e6, not only is this pawn f7 under attack, but so is this pawn on b7. White's queen is opened up, and the position is unstable for this king on e8. I think objectively, black is doing well, because if we do a quick material count, white has 7 pawns, black has 5 pawns, but black has a bishop. So even if you lose the b7 pawn, you do have a bishop for 3 pawns. That's an interesting dynamic where 3 pawns, 3 points, a bishop is worth a bit above 3 points. So it is going to be slightly better for black. However, purely in a blitz game, I prefer white's change, maybe in a classical game, because king safety is paramount. White's king sitting behind a wall of pawns. Black's king really lacking some defense here. And ideas with queen c6 check, forcing the king to f8, even bringing the queen back to e4, hitting this lonely pawn on h7. I think black has to be very careful. And how would you even go about contemplating or coming up with a plan to help you survive this position so your king doesn't get in any more trouble, I would start walking my king over. Maybe king f8, there it is, to over to g7. And Anna will try to continue the attack. But you don't really have pieces in the attack. This one rook on g5 does a good job of defending the black king. This rook can come to b8 in the next moment and threaten this pawn on b2. So once black shores up her king, she can then try to create threats of her own. And the bishop on e7 isn't a very good piece just yet. It is sitting there stopping white from checkmating on f7, as well as pushing this pawn to e7. So it is just a defensive piece for the time being. However, as, say, the queens get traded or something like that, that's when the bishop can shine, is when the attack dwindles, maybe d5, eventually bishop c5 trying to happen. I think it's a risky move to play just because rook a d1 happens so fast. But the point is that black, for the time being, needs to figure out her problems before she can go on the offensive. So now Anna sits back in her chair. She's trying to work this one out. I really like the nature of this position for white. I just, as of yet, have not seen a way to continue. I think rook a to d1 makes sense. As mentioned, the bishop on e7 cannot move because queen f7 would be a checkmate for white. So rook a d1 applies more pressure, brings a piece that's not in the game. And by in the game, I mean helping with the attack. You bring this rook over to d1. Maybe this rook even slides up to d3 and h3, going after this lonely h7 pawn. Or after rook a d1, I try to put this move pawn to c4, putting more pressure on this d5 pawn, which is pinned to the queen on d8. So actually, I think after rook a to d1, queen to c8 makes a lot of sense. Try to trade the queens off the board. When you have a material imbalance and your king is unsafe, you try to think what happens in the case of liquidation. Here, that simplification helps black's king. And if you try to avoid the queen trade, then this pawn on c2 also becomes a target. So it's not like you can just avoid without consequence. Sometimes you can. You just move your queen away and say, hey, no more attack for you. Here, that's not really possible. So now, with the time being equal, I think that black's chances have greatly improved. Anna trying to figure it out. So rook a to c1. I guess she's protecting this pawn on c2 in advance. It's a preemptive decision where if the queen is under attack, she can retreat her queen and not have to trade them off the board. So here she has queen to b6, whereas if the rook were on d1, which looks like it's a better square, the pawn on c2 would have been hanging after queen to b6. So queen b6 played. Black can actually play the move queen to c5 because white's queen only has the b7 square for safety. So we can actually see a repetition of sorts if black doesn't feel like she can play for more. So that's good to have. Store that in your back pocket. Queen c5 played, in fact, and after queen b7, she can just play queen to c8 if she feels like she shouldn't play for more. Queen a7, there's queen c6. You haven't quite forced the queen trade yet. Rook a7, there's queen to b8 check. I'm still liking the look of black's position, but because you aren't forcing the queens off the board, perhaps you're worried. You play queen c8, you say, that's it. I don't want to be in any danger anymore. Let me just repeat the position. And Anna, well, the choice is yours. You can play into a worse endgame, or you can just accept the fact that there is no more attack. And here we have seen queen to c8 and queen to b6. And bishop c5 play that allows e7 with check. Oh my gosh. The reason why I'm thinking e7 is because the pawn looks important for the attack, but you are, if you capture the pawn, you're opening up the length of the file for this rook, and it's getting to be more aggressive for white. I'm seeing e7. If you take on e7 and play rook to e6, she says, no, Robert, what are you talking about? I want to keep that pawn. It was a choice between two very different options. One was to give up a pawn and then have two pawns for a piece, probably a bad material trade, but the potential of attack. Look at what Munkhzul does. She is well studied in her defense because her defense can quickly turn into offense as this rook swings to g7, closer to the king, and hitting this pawn on g2. And that can be quite a dangerous attack. It also can just sit on e7 and to blockade this pawn. I really like this move, rook a7. It is well timed here. And now we're having a matchup with just about over a minute per side here. It's going to be who's the better bullet player at this point, because black's position is to be preferred in the objective classical chess sense of things. However, in a practical setting, in a quick game, anything can happen, and it's about who is just in better shape as the time scramble ensues. I am looking right at rook to g7. She probably will sit her rook on e7, applying pressure on e6. The pawn is now under attack twice and only defended once. Rook to g7 will be met by g3. And the reason why I don't like this inclusion so much, I am looking at sacrifices. You know me, not my pieces, chat. I'm looking right for the sacrifice. The pawn f2 is pinned to the king on g1. So and now that is setting it up clearly. You better watch out, because queen takes g3 check is in the air. It might not result in a checkmate because the white king can slither away to a square like d1. But I have that clearly on my mind. King to g2, that way the pawn on f2 is no longer pinned. If you take on g3, you just give me a rook for a pawn. Don't do that. So the reason why I didn't like rook g7, even though I suggested it first, was because with the pawn on g2, it felt like there were more attacking possibilities. And right now, black is trying to get an attack on this king. So far, the king is safe. You can even play a move like pawn f3. I'd be hesitant before making that move. And by the way, Bibi Sara Assaubayeva, she won her first game over the chess queen, Alexandra Kosteniuk. Kosteniuk cannot afford to lose this match. She needs to win, in fact, the whole thing, just to have a chance to make it the super final. Rook h5 played, threatening queen h3 check. That's bad news for Muzychuk. She plays rook h1, but after queen h3, king g1, there has to be something there. Oh, I see attack there. Rook takes g3 check. We'll see if this happens. The point of rook takes g3 check after that is the pawn can't take here on g3 because the h1 rook is hanging with checkmate. You can't take with the f pawn. It is pinned. So rook takes, there it is. You have to take with the queen. And here comes rook to g5, pinning and winning this queen for the two rooks. And when you get this trade-off of two rooks for a queen, it's all about king safety. This king is not going to be safe once rook takes g3 happens, or if you take on g5, it still won't be safe. In fact, Muzychuk simply resigns. We will go to our next game. Let's switch on over to one of these first-round games that are in time trouble. It looks like Yifan as she takes on her compatriot. 20 seconds now for Yifan, and well, she just scooped up in exchange. The rooks were on the same diagonal. The bishop attacked them both. That's what you call a skewer. And now Yifan is up a clean exchange with the opposite color bishops. The reason why that is an important dynamic to note is in comes this knight to e4. No, it doesn't, because bishop f4 hitting this rook. She is just in time. If this knight came to e4 one move earlier, there would have been none of this business removing the guard of this bishop on e6. Okay, the new game starts. Barely have time to look at that. Actually, I do have a moment, so I'm going to bring up that old game. And the rook is under attack. It needs to stay defending this bishop. And that's why this was such a timely decision by Yifan. b4 was a great shot, especially in her opponent's time trouble, because if this knight could get to e4, blockading the e file, this b4 move would actually be quite bad because the pawn c3 would not be a target. The knight can't get there in time. b5 hits the rook. Bishop f4 hits it a second time. Thank you for your bishop. And with it, the game. So let's move on to some other players. We haven't looked at the chess queens game in the first match. So let's look at it now. She has the black pieces. It has stemmed from a queen's Indian defense where this bishop on a6 is sitting out on the side here, not really doing all that much, staring to a brick wall of a pawn on c4. You may want to play pawn to b5, but if you ever play b5, this bishop on a6 really isn't getting better, and some of your squares are getting weaker. So rook d2 played by Sara. She may just want to bring her rook over to d1 or over to e1. She has a choice. Bishop b7, to me, that knows, hey, I want to play for c5. But think about the transition that will happen if you play c5. You have many rooks for white, both of them, lined up on the d file here. And you have the pawn majority for white if you cut the board in half. Let's cut the board at the e file and look to the left of that line. You have 4 pawns for white here and only 3 for black. So in certain endgames, when just pawns or minor pieces are remaining, I'm going to try to break free a passed pawn, which isn't easy to do with so many pieces on the board, because if you push your pawns forward too much, they're in danger of becoming overextended and vulnerable to attack. So queen c7 is played by Kosteniuk, the chess queen. What does that do? The answer is really not all that much for the time being. Black is sort of sitting on the position. She has an extra minute on the clock, but her position is certainly worse because she doesn't have as much space as her opponent. I would play h3 if I were Sara, maybe even consider g4. She plays h4 right away. I guess h3 isn't necessary as the knight defends the g4 square. So you can just play g4, g5 as you see fit. And I'm trying to make this position work to the best of my abilities. I see certain themes here. Rook to d3 might be a better place for the rook because you may end up sliding your rook to the king side after g4 and breaking forward. So starting with queen f4 makes sense to me. It clears the third rank. It also maybe applies more pressure with g4, g5. The knight can no longer go to d7 because of this pawn on f7. Instead, she retreats her knight. Where is that knight going? In the event of rook c8 to d8, applying pressure on this pawn on d4, I don't think she really wants to bring her knight to f4. So she does that, but I don't really know why this knight's on f4. In the event of c5, there may be d5. That could be one of the ideas. But the knight on e5 was such a good square. If we just go back a couple moves, she had the opportunity to play queen f4, just sort of keeping black stuck. You can't go knight d7 with this f7 pawn hanging. Instead, she puts her knight on that square, which really is not a bad decision. I don't want to be overly critical. But as we get to the live board here, I'm just sort of confused, interested in how white intends to proceed. I don't see the same g4, g5 possibilities. The queen and knight, can't share a square here. And even this black queen looks a little bit more powerful without this knight on e5. There may be a timely e5 move you have to consider. c5, of course, is thematic in a position of this nature, just trying to blow the position open, offer some exchanges, and get more space for black's pieces. When you have less space, having fewer pieces can often be to your benefit, because if you look at black's pieces over here, you're kind of fighting for the same squares with all your pieces. Bishop f3 is a move I like a lot. You're now allowing black to play c5, but c5 is a difficult move to play because of the amount of captures that can happen in a position of this nature. And so queen to d6 was played. I wonder if she actually wants to put her queen on a3. That is running away from the king side, but it does stop white's pawns in their tracks and then will allow eventual moves like c5. So I'm just going to take a quick peek at some of these other games here, see what may be interesting for all of us. I think this game is more positional nature, so for some of us that may not be so exciting. I may switch our attention now. I think I'm going to do that. I will keep an eye on this game as it is, of course, an important one. Let's go over to the game between Gunina and Tao Wen, because here it's a weird pawn structure that you do not see every day. Double isolated e-pawns, and black's best move here for Gunina would be, hey, please take my e4 pawn off the board somewhere so I could have an attack on your king. But with these pawns on e5 and e4, no attack will exist in the immediate position. However, after rook f6, rook g6, knight f5, can't go there, can go to h4, there is the potential for an attack. I'm just not sure if it's quick enough. At queen g4, aiming for queen d7, a very smart idea. By the way, Bibi Sara and Alexandra Kosteniuk have drawn their game, but I was saying it was a smart idea to try to trade the queens off on d7. And Gunina says, kidding me? Queen trade? What queen trade? I'm blocking your diagonal. My next move is intended to be rook to g6. But what about rook to d5 here, saying, hey, I'm just blocking your diagonal and I'm going to win your e4 pawn. I don't even care if it costs me an exchange. I may still consider making that sacrifice. There are certain tactics that I want to point out. For example, rook to d5, there may be knight takes e3. You can't take with the f pawn because rook f1 is check and mate. You take with the rook, down goes the f2 pawn, and now b2, this checkmate on f1 still threatened. It may not work in this position. I'm just trying to let everybody be aware that certain tactics do exist in positions of this nature. Rook g6, the queen, oh my gosh, all of the pieces are coming to the party here, and nobody invited white's pieces. It just said, hey, let me go for an attack. This bishop attacks this queen on h3 through the knight, threatening some discoveries. Knight h4, you have to be careful because there is queen takes or bishop takes e4. So rook g4, look at Gunina go, protecting this pawn. And now knight h4 comes with the oomph factor that you really need because there is no capture on e4 available. And then this knight even works its way into f3. I love the way Gunina is playing this attack here. I think white's position is just collapsing in a few moves if black plays this right. Knight h4, knight f3, in comes that pony. The bishop then opens up all the way up to the h3 square. With this queen, you can slide over to g6 and h5 to help deliver the checkmate. This is really, really great stuff here by Gunina. And this knight comes to b3, so it can go to d2 in the near future to try to trade off this very aggressive piece. Here comes queen f1. I don't see any other move. Your queen's under attack. You can't take on h4. You lose your queen. So queen h1, knight f3 check. There is no knockout just yet. I may slide my rook back to g5 and over to h5. That does take a move. And so here, king h1. And I'm looking at queen g6. I'm looking at rook g5. Rook g5, rook h5 is mentioned. But then there's some knight d2 stuff. So, wow, but actually, this may work. Because if you ever take me on f3, I take with my pawn. And then I have bishop h3 coming, bishop g2. The attack continues. Just because I lose my knight doesn't mean I lose the momentum. And this is looking like a very promising attack for Gunina, and she is an amazing attacking player. Amazing doesn't even really cut it for her. She knows how to maneuver and harmonize her pieces so that when the attack comes, it roars. And here, rook g5, rook h5, to my eyes, looks like a great plan. Queen g6 to h5 is another one that I've been looking at and mentioning. I think that somehow the rook moving back feels correct to me. But if queen to g6, knight to d2, there still is just these queen h5 type maneuvers. I just don't see the follow-up in a position like this where I'm going rook to d8, and it's black's king that quickly can become in trouble. So let me go back to the live position here. I know I just showed you in a potential route that we may see. It's the reason why I like playing rook g5, rook h5. It feels like there's more potential for the attack as the rook gets out of the way of the bishop preemptively. So that when the queen is on h5, the rook, oh, here comes the queen h5, the rook still needs to move out the way. And that is what's bothering me. That's why Gunina says, let me retreat my knight. And just because I'm retreating doesn't mean that I'm scared or that I'm on the defensive. No, I'm actually keeping up the attack. This knight on d2 is blocking white's rook on d1 from being useful on the d file. So it's actually just saying, I'm not going to trade pieces with somebody who has less space than I do. And now here comes knight h3, for example. This rook can't really move just yet because there's no safe square. It can't go to f4, can't go to h4, excuse me. So it's going to sit on g4 for the time being. No, that cannot be a good move. Here comes knight f3, or this rook takes, I'm trying to make this work. Like rook h4, gh4, bishop g4. No, knight f3 is much calmer. They're not, I sacrifice pieces because they're not mine. Haha, take a free pawn. Look at that. I just noticed that that pawn is hanging, and she's going to do that. So instead of the attack, what Gunina did is increase the pressure and then just steal a pawn and say, hey, you like your queen on h2? No, not really. I like my rook coming down to d2. That looks a lot better. So queen f7, just safeguarding some squares like e6. a2 is also hanging, by the way. Gunina, look at the way she turned an attack, so a positional advantage into a material one. That is very wise play of Gunina. She is up a minute on the clock. She should be able to secure victory here. And Gunina needs to win this match. If she doesn't win this match, she will stay in a tie with Katerina Lochno, who has played all three of her Grand Prix legs. So Gunina, if she wins this, she is permanently ahead of Lochno, who has no more opportunities to play for points. And she looks like she will ensure a qualification into the super final of this event. She'll be a very happy camper. Rook d6, just making sure there are no checks on g6. Now she can play queen to b2, get a queen. Oh, no, you can't play queen b2. You hang this pawn e4. This is actually a little more difficult than she probably hoped, but she plays queen d5. Now rook e6 for sure. You do not want to lose this pawn on. Watch out for queen d1, queen f1. That's why she played rook to c1. If the queen could get to f1, you were checkmating on the g2 square. And actually, I think white's kind of out of moves. Here, queen d1, and then queen f1, and you actually have no way of stopping checkmate. I told you what was going to happen. Queen e8 is covered. Otherwise, there would be a draw by repetition. Queen e8 to g6. Nope, you don't have that. My rook is on e5 doing all the work. We'll just bring up that final position one more time. If the rook were not there, the queen would be on a yo-yo string, going from e8 to g6 back and forth. You don't have that available to you. So Gunina wins that game, and now we see her go into the third game of the match. She is tied 1-1. That was a really, really nice performance by her. I may want to call attention to that game later, because if she goes on to win this match, she came back from an initial game deficit, and she played a brilliant attacking game. All credit to Gunina. And for Tao Wen, that was a nice defensive effort. She tried her best, but she couldn't quite make it happen. Her pieces were still cluttered. She didn't have enough space, and her game resulted in defeat. By the way, Yifan just won another game, and we only have 6 minutes and 45 seconds remaining of this longest time control. Reminder to everybody that after this time control, it's 30 minutes of this time control. We end up into the 3+1. We get into shorter time controls where there will be some more games played and less time to work with. I see that Munkhzul won her second game in a row against Anna Muzychuk. Anna will have to make a comeback. She was commentating in the Leon Blitz tournament yesterday, and Munkhzul was playing in it. And I remember Anna made a joke about that their preparation was quite different. It looks like in the early going, the preparation is working better for Munkhzul. And I don't actually know because I didn't see the games really from start to finish, but so far a good result for Munkhzul. And where to go to from here? I like this position, honestly. It's clogged up. If Chi Yu were back, she would say, oh, okay, of course Robert liked this. This is an end game. Does this look like an end game to you? All that's been traded is a queen and a bishop for black and a queen and a knight from white. it's not really a pure endgame. There's so much life left in this position. It's closed down for now. I'm looking for black at some kind of rook h4, putting pressure on the center. And it is white's move. So, I'm just talking about what black's ideas may be in response to white's plan. I would take with the e pawn. I do not like the look of c takes d5, allowing b5. It's a very common idea for white. Note that these pawns are doubled on the b file, and she takes with the knight first here. Her plan will be to take back with the e pawn. I feel pretty confident saying that. And if you have these double pawns here, you want to push them forward. That was the start of the plan. And now she takes with the e pawn because otherwise b5 would have been happening, and black would have been very upset about that. So what the problem is in this position for white, I would play h4. And the reason why is not because, oh, I'm going to mount a pawn storm on the king side attack. This bishop is my problematic piece. You say, wait, Robert, it's the only light square bishop on the board. How could you possibly say that's a problematic piece? It's not doing anything. This is a brick wall of a pawn chain. This is shutting my bishop down on the light squares. If I brought my bishop to d3, what's that doing? This pawn on g6 is making it look useless there as well. So h4 would have allowed bishop to h3. If I am Tao Wen, I'm looking at knight f8 e6, bring my knight forward, put pressure on g5, put pressure on d4. And she does play this move h4 now because her bishop does want to go to h3 and stop this knight from getting into e6. At least it won't get there without the possibility of white capturing it. So a good decision there by Gunina. I probably would have started with h4, but she developed her bishop. Her king will likely go to d2 rather than castling in either direction. This rook can come to e1. The problem with not having a knight here for white is typically you want a knight on a5. Like, Robert, what are you talking about? Knight on a5. Well, if there were a knight on d2, it comes to b3, it comes to a5, puts pressure on this b7 pawn. This b7 pawn is backward. It's stuck there. You can't push it without losing a6. Woo, f5 played. Okay. King d2. Another thing to keep in mind is that their d5, you can't take on b5 with the pawn because the d5 pawn, sorry, with the c pawn, the d5 pawn's hanging. And I have rook a7 afterwards. She plays it as I'm talking about it because the bishop cuts off the rook from protecting the pawn. So at the rook a7, it looks like you are going to lose this pawn on b7. And it's a very important pawn to the position because now white's pieces are free flowing and black's pieces are not. You have a wall of pawns here that make your pieces restricted. This bishop on e7, I'm sorry, doing what exactly? Not much. This knight on d7 has no forward progress thanks to this pawn on d4. It would have to reroute via f8 into e6. But now if my rook takes on b7, good luck to you. That's a pin on the 7th rank. Here comes rook to e1, saying that your king can't move, it's tied to the knight. Your knight can't move, it's tied to blocking the rook from the bishop. Actually, black's stuck here, and this has to be a winning position. I don't see the win just yet. Maybe bishop f3, pawn h5, something of that nature. None of black's pieces can move here. Completely stuck, completely and utterly helpless to prevent white's next couple moves. All right, so rook a8, trying to go maybe rook a2 or rook a4. Do I care about that? I'm looking at, okay, she's going to go h5 and take this pawn. Same idea as bishop f3. I think bishop h3 is even smarter because with the bishop on h3, there's no knight takes d4 suddenly hitting this bishop on f3 or anything like that. You have to go h5. You just went bishop h3. So you have to go h5, threaten to take on g6, remove the guard of this knight. If the knight moves again, there's a problem with this bishop on e7. All of black's pieces are stuck together, and all you need to do is play a move like h5, trying to open the board up. I'm trying to just keep an eye on some other games here. Nothing more interesting than this game at the moment. We have Bibisaur and Alexandra Kosteniuk tied 1.5 apiece. They're playing their 4th game right now. Other matches may only see 3 games, whereas that one is on its 4th. h5 played, trying to get this g6 pawn, king c2. I think that's what Gunina was thinking about. She wasn't thinking about h5. She was thinking, where does my king go after rook d4? Does it go to c3? Does it go to c2? Does it go to c1? And that was really good judgment by Gunina. And just spending a little bit of time there. And that way you make the response immediately. And now the onus is back on Tao Wen to figure out what to do now. Because, instead of just sitting and thinking, allowing your opponent to think on your turn, you make that really snap judgment that you spent time considering. So that's really not a snap judgment. Just thought about it. That seems like really just using your time wisely. And yeah, I'm going to take that part back. But the point still stands that now it's up to Tao Wen here to figure out what to do because h takes g6 is deadly. The knight on e6 is hanging. G takes h5, allows bishop takes f5, pressure on e6. Behind is this bishop on e7. King f8 simply drops a knight on e6. You don't really have any good looking moves to my eyes. Maybe rook to e4. And rook d4 may be the only move, but there's still h takes g6 at the very least, like rook e4, d. So h d6 move were not really that important, but rook takes e4 you have to take with the d pawn, otherwise you lose this knight on e6. So king f8 seems to be the move here. If you take on g6, you simply lose the bishop on e7. So king f8 played. Now rook takes e4. You have to take with this d pawn, otherwise the knight hangs. And then I take on f5. It looks like white's just making tremendous progress. His bishop ends up around in d7, for instance, and your c6 pawn. Oh wait, there's knight d4 check. I spoke too soon. Knights are tricky. I missed the knight fork, everybody. I blunder too. Just because I'm the one screaming moves at you does not mean that I do not blunder. So knight d4 check is the point. After bishop takes f5, do not play like me. Do not blunder this bishop on f5. So let's see what you can do instead. Let me move my king. No, I don't really want to move my king. What can I do? What can I do here? b4, protecting c5. That looks really smart. Kind of like that. And this looks really bad. Rook f7. Oh, rook f7. You can't go to e8 because rook e7 check. You force the king to g8, and then you slide your rook to e7 because you're threatening back-running checkmates. So you force the king into a worse position, and then you put your rook in e7, and then you take on f5, and then you take on e4. She's doing it. I mean, Gunina is having herself a day. She is playing really well in these last two games here. And I think that rook e7, and this is going to be the last game of the 5-minute portion. As you see, the timer has run out in the match clock. They get to finish their games, but they will not play another game. They will not restart after this one. So rook e7, it keeps black completely stuck. Rook e7, as mentioned, if you take on d6 here, played rook e8 check, the knight would have to block. I'll just show that very quickly. Check, the knight blocks, so just take your pawn f5. You're stuck. You have no good moves. And I'm going to win e4. I'm going to bring my bishop to check your king, and your king is just in a mating net and permanently so. So rook e7 played. I think that knight takes g5, but I'm just taking on f5 anyway. You're still in the same mating net. You're not changing the dynamic of this game at all. And oh my God, I think you're just going to keep black completely stuck. Knight g5, here it comes. Bishop f5, king f8, and then bishop d7. You want to play d7, but you can't because your rook is hanging. So you play bishop d7, and black's pieces can't move. And then you're threatening c6, and then you're threatening. Oh my gosh, Gunina. Give Gunina a round of applause. She deserves it. And for Tao Wen, she's doing her best. I want to see some claps in the chat here because what she's doing is unbelievable right now. The way she is handling this game, she just is giving her opponent no opportunities of counterplay. I blundered a piece in my analysis before. Gunina spent some time, was like, not so fast. I'm not going to play like Robert Hess here. I'm going to make sure that I don't blunder my bishop when it comes to f5. And now this knight is trying to come to d4. She says, no goodies for you. The king takes away the square. Okay, now we do have a concrete threat on this pawn g6. So rook f7 check, king g8, bishop e6, which threatens a discovery on this king. It walks the king all the way over to h8, and then it feels like from there you should be able to make some progress. There must be something. I see the mating net. It's there. It's there available to you. And maybe you don't even have to walk the king to the corner, but it feels like, especially in the end game, forcing the king all the way, which he plays rook f7. Here comes bishop e. I don't even need to speak. We'll just let Gunina's play do the talking at this point. And I'm wondering after, so rook takes d6, there's rook f6 check. Very important to put the rook here, protecting the bishop. If the king goes to the corner, there's check and mate. Here comes rook f6, or rook d7. It actually wins everything because you can't take my bishop. That's checkmate. So both moves are winning on the spot. She plays rook f6, protecting the piece. Valentina Gunina just played an exceptional game from start to finish. That was one of the best games we have seen in the entirety of the Women's Speed Chess Championship thus far. I don't want to jinx her because there's still time to walk into a knife fork, but I don't think, based on the quality of her game, in this one, that she's going to walk into said knife fork. She is now, she can probably even take on f5 and just push this pawn. She'll be up a pawn in a king and pawn game that's completely winning. She may not want, she does it. I mean, just like, what? Valentina, don't even start this new game. You're not going to get to continue it. And you just don't want to play any more moves. After that gem of a game, you don't even want to make another move in this time control. That was epic stuff. I am impressed. That was a clinic. I am going to actually open that game up for later so I can show everybody that no matter how she does, I'm actually going to save that for like students because that is how you play a game of that nation. Let's go to the Yifan game real quick. I see 2.8 seconds left for her opponent here. And wait, but an extra queen for no, it's white's move. I was like, an extra queen for black. It was white's move. She was just waiting to take this queen, probably playing in her opponent's time trouble. And here comes this rook to e7, this fourth rank rook. Oh, no, rook f4 now. It's even better. The rook left the f file, and down goes the knight on f8. That is another win for Yifan. She is cruising in this match. Let's go to the game between Bibi Sara and Alexandra Kosteniuk. What is happening here? Okay. Good spatial control by white, but this knight is about to pop back to d6, and this pawn may come to f5, and all of a sudden black is saying, hey, wait, what'd you say about space? I'm the one without space? If I put my knight on d6, your spatial advantage with your pawns on b5 and d5, who cares? In comes my knight to d6. I blockaded your pawn, which frees up my bishop because my bishop needs to stay on f8 just to stop d6. You don't want to allow that pawn to make progress. So after this knight comes back to d6, then my bishop can go to g7, or I can play h5, bishop h6. That looks really nasty. Gaining some space on the king side. You may want to push all your pawns over there. I'm struggling to come up with an idea for Bibi Sara here with the white pieces. Black's pieces are coming alive. Black's ideas feel much more natural to me. I'm already struggling to come up with a single move. And chess is a game of ideas, not just moves. She plays g4, putting pressure on f5. She does take it. But who does that help? Who does an open g file help? Does it help white, who's trying to swing this rook over to g1? Or does it just knight f1? And here, watch out for e4 check that wins a bishop on b2. Didn't understand knight f1. That move caught me off guard. How about bishop f6 to go bishop h? Nope, not h5. I wish I could draw my arrows better. Bishop h4. Okay, rook g8. Just bring your pieces over into the attack here. It looks like black's initiative is... Oh, don't play rook g8 so quickly. Oh, actually, you need rook g2 check. You may be able to get away with that. I don't know if you want to give the e5 pawn, but you can play rook g8 to go rook to g2. That was a possibility. Don't like this king on e2. Take that pawn. And now what? So how do I actually give this king a check? Rook e4. I don't even need to give a check. I defend and I attack. Why not a multi-purpose move? Kosteniuk. She said, wait, you were talking about Gunina? Why don't you talk about my games that way? Because right now I'm putting on a good show here for everybody. And f3 check is, or f3 is coming. The point was you couldn't take on f3 because of rook g8. Ooh. Wow. From where we started here to this position, Kosteniuk is saying, you know, Valentina and I are teammates. We played a lot of the same events. We played each other a number of times. Robert, I got what it takes too to win a one-sided game where I have all the control over the board here. Rook to e8, trying to get this rook to e1, it looks like. And the knockout isn't so easy to see. I'm actually not finding the... Wait, oh my gosh, look at that move. Look at rook d3. So now she can play rook e1 as well, but oh my gosh. She just cleared the path for her second rook. And now all of her pieces are coming to the party. How am I supposed to control myself when they're playing like this? What a performance by Kosteniuk. She brought all of her... I just need to go back before we take our first break and head into the 3-minute portion. I need to show you this final position where all of her pieces are in play here and go back to where we started, where I was like, wait a second, white has a little bit of a spatial advantage. And the move played was rook to d1, and maybe that's the move that cost her. She should have played g4, should Bibi Sara have, because the point is after g6, knight e3, you're not getting f5, or maybe, you know, I don't know where the knight... Wait, what? Oh, somebody challenged Bibi Sara, some random person. Nice one there. I'm going to go back to the game I was analyzing. It would have stopped f5 before it could have happened. Instead, we saw a wonderful conclusion to this game where all of black's pieces came alive. And, well, you saw the final position. That was just look at black's pieces go. One by one, they entered the fray. And then black's attack grew. White couldn't do anything. Finally, we saw resignation with knight e3 coming. So on that note, I am going to take a break. And when I return, I believe I am going to be joined by one of my favorite people on the planet. It will not be a solo show anymore. So for those of you who have been saying, where is his co-commentator? She's on her way. In the meantime, enjoy the break. We will be back with more coverage of the FIDE Women's Speed Chess Championship. And I told you I would be back with one of my favorite people on the planet, and then they gave me Alexandra Botez. So,
You know, Robert, you can't always get what you want, okay?
but if you try sometimes,
and you don't succeed, then you get stuck with Alexandra Botez as your commentary duo. Woo!
Oh, it's been a while since we've commentated together, and as you know, and everybody knows, you are one of my favorite people. All jokes aside, Alexandra, I am so ecstatic that we're covering the rest of the Women's Speeches Championship together. And as you see on the scoreboard right now, we have one matchup that is, two matchups that are one game apart. Valentina Gunina and Tao Wen are 1 point apart. Gunina has the lead. And then Kosteniuk is up a game on Bibisar Assaubayeva. While the other matches 3-0 in favor of players. But are you a bit surprised that Anna Muzychuk, the higher rated of the two players, is down by 3?
I am surprised, but she has been streaming a lot, and I've been told that when professional chess players start streaming, they start having a little bit worse of a result. No, I'm kidding on that, and it is surprising to see Anna Muzychuk only with 0 out of 3, because when I look across the cross table, other favorites like Kosteniuk, Yifan, Valentina Gunina, they're all doing very well.
They are indeed. And Munkhzul actually beat Muzychuk in an earlier leg of this WSCC. So it's not a total shocker that she's out in the lead. I think that Anna Muzychuk has her work cut out for her. She struggles, I guess, in this online blitz format. And as we've noted time after time, not all of the highest rated players in the world are used to playing online. Things change during a pandemic where you got to get your mouse speed ready. But we'll see if she can come back. And credit to Munkhzul, because she has really been playing excellent chess throughout the WSCC.
Well, I'm excited to see. You've been covering the entire event. Has anybody been really surprising you so far?
Well, in these matches here, I mean, kind of your usual suspects. Gunina is doing really well. Kosteniuk has been performing well. Who you found did extremely well in the last Grand Prix leg. She lost in the final to Katerina Lochno on a mouse slip blunder in the tiebreak part where she dropped her rook in the wrong square. So,
oh God.
As you can tell by the way I'm talking, in a really weird way, it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Well,
and I should have given you a warning before I talk about mouse slips and squares, because I know how painful they can be.
Yeah, can you please do a trigger warning, Robert? You know who you're commentating with. Speaking of, I think chat and myself, we can barely recognize you with this fresh new haircut.
Well, I think you kind of recognize me as, I sent you some photos afterwards, because that's how tight we are, is that I was like, I look cleaner. I got a haircut. I'm ready. Honestly, Unruly Robert felt like a good character, but Ruly Robert is hated by some, and I guess it just had to happen.
Fair enough. And did we already talk about the format today? I think some people in chat could use a refresher, not talking about myself, of course.
We have talked about the format, but it is good to give people a refresher. These matches today are just, we can actually pull up the slide right here. You see, we had the 30 minutes of 5 minute plus 1 second per move. We are now in the 3 minutes plus 1 section with 30 minutes of that time control. Then we get to 10 minutes of 1 plus 1 bullet. So if the games are going, they go until the match clock is up. And if they're still in progress during the buzzer, when that sounds, the games continue, but they do not get any more games. You play 3 out of the 4 Grand Prix legs, and each one's a 16-player knockout. So the players are playing for their very lives within the knockout in these matches. The leaderboard is such that Anna Ushanina, who has played all 3 of her Grand Prix thus far, she is in first place. Valentina Gunina is just a step back, as is Katerina Lochno, but Katerina Lochno has already played all of hers. So Gunina is the one who is trying to secure her spot into the super final.
Makes sense. And I just got word that the games started. And right now, so far, I'm taking a look at the game between Ning and Yifan, who has a perfect score so far, 3 points.
That's actually a good game. Sorry to cut you off there. It's a good game to start, because we may not, if the score continues going in this manner, we may have to shift to other matches. So sorry, what were you going to say, Alexandra?
No, let's talk a little bit about the Catalan. I think it's one of those openings that I always wanted to learn personally, because you're starting with D4, which is known to be a more positional style opening, but it's also very aggressive and a true gambit where many of the variations, you end up giving your c-pawn for real. Of course, that's not what happened here. But what do you think of the way that Ning is approaching it so far?
Yeah, I think that this actually, all things considered, is very nice for white. Look at this bishop on c3, the bishop on g2, and your pawns on c4 and d4. It feels like all of white's pieces are coordinated quite well. And for black, you're trying to time how to counter in the center. What do we mean by that? Can I play a c5 move? Can I eventually play an e5 move? Not going to be easy with white controlling more squares. And as soon as you play a move like c5, look at this bishop on the light squares. Aren't you making that even more powerful? So Alexandra, I'm going to throw it back to you for a second. I don't really like this position without any space and a bad light square bishop, but you know a thing or two about that, don't you?
Yes, Robert, I do. Many times I have found myself in a similar position to what Yifan has right now, where you look at your light square bishop and you wonder, where did I go wrong? Why is that bishop so trapped? I thought I was still in opening theory. And then you realize that the kind of opening you're playing is a little bit more solid. So it starts off where you don't have as much central control. Maybe your pieces aren't as developed, but then you're slowly inching your way forward with an explosive move like b5, and boom, your bishop is going to eventually be ready for some action. Um, was that the answer you were looking for?
Honestly, it was. And B5 was well timed, and your reaction was perfectly in sync with that. B5 was to open up the bishop to try to create an attack, especially as white had castled queen side. So black's king is on the king side, white's queen over here on the queen side. So you're attacking on different flanks. And now with this pawn capture on c4, in comes this knight to d5. You mentioned the bishop. Well, that can go to b7 or to a6, depending on what happens. So I'm with you. And I do like to crack a joke here and there about the French defense, which is Alexandra's bread and butter. And sometimes bread and butter is just empty carbs. Other times it's delicious. So, teach their own.
Usually it's both. But bishop a5, that is a spicy
Whoa.
move because it looks like it's a bishop that is being offered for free. But there are going to be some tactics on that c6 square afterwards.
Ooh, that's a really nice shot there. And it requires a lot of calculation. What is happening here? Because so queen a5, knight c6, queen c7, knight takes e7 check is the point. After queen e7, there's just bishop takes a8. So white wins in exchange in that line. So that seems very direct. But is the black queen somehow? What are you going to do about this, actually?
That's a good question. Because do you have any other choice other than taking the bishop? Let's think about that for a second. So where can the queen go? Let's say something like queen d6.
Okay.
But then you still get met with knight takes c6, right? Because the rook has nowhere to go and you're still going to win in exchange.
Yep. And there's bishop like queen d6, knight takes c6 also opens up an attack of bishop b4, hitting the queen on d6 and the bishop on e6. Ooh. So she takes it, but that's really saying she had no other options. What a tactic there with bishop a5.
It really is a tactic. And I think we're too deep into the game. We are on move 17. So there's no way this could be theory, right? This is something that Ning discovered on the board.
Yeah, she uncorked a vicious sacrifice of a bishop. She wins a pawn. She will take on e7. Importantly, that's with check, because otherwise this tactic would not work. If, say, after queen c7, you take this on e7, that's not check. Black can just play a move like bishop b7. Yifan says, I'm going to be down exchange if I went queen c7, so let me go for an attack. But Alexandra, isn't now white up a full rook? Question mark.
White is up a full rook and a full minute on the clock, which is really intimidating. So if Yifan has some tricks on the king side, she can come back from that. But after queen takes c3, I mean, her king has c2, d2 as escape squares, and the black queen can't really attack the king alone. There's just not enough pieces by the white king side to intuitively feel like she has a chance.
Yeah, I'm with you. B takes c3 would allow queen a3 check, picking up this knight on e7. That wouldn't be advisable. And very importantly, is this bishop on a8 actually protects the e4 square. So if queen takes c3, there's never knight e4 because the bishop may seem far away. That's the beauty of the bishop's long range pieces. It's covering this e4 square from any sort of attacking chance with this knight being involved. And as you pointed out, Alexandra, a lone queen, I know the queen is powerful, And we are in the Women's Speed Chess Championship, and we have a player named Chess Queen competing here. Oh, she took on C3 with a pawn, though.
And if Yifan is still the highest rated female chess player, and I saw that she was one of the youngest ever to become a professor at, was it Shenzhen University?
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. Because I saw she was studying at Oxford before, I think on the, it's not the Rhodes Scholarship, was it? Anyway,
yeah, she was a Rhodes Scholarship.
She was okay, yeah. So she was a Rhodes Scholar. She was studying at Oxford. She decided she wanted to focus on her academics as well. And she's still over 2,700. I mean, could you have somebody more motivational?
Well, I hope your parents are watching. Alexandra, weren't you supposed to do things like this? No, I'm just kidding. I'm saying that out of personal. I hope my mom and dad, if you're watching, I hope I didn't disappoint you. But back to the chess here. So neither of us have to hang our heads in shame. We have a position where all of a sudden Black's only down an exchange, and this king is now on E1. That king went from C1, casting long, to back over the king side. But the king's not going to be safe there either with the light squares so vulnerable. Queen H3 coming. I think Black's position is easier to play in a bullet scramble.
Wow. Well, that's a turn of events. I'm still recovering after that burn, but if you look at the clock, both players have about 14 seconds. So it's going to be a time scramble for both. It's crazy to think that she came back from being down an entire rook, and now it's White's king that looks much more vulnerable. There's no pawns around the White king. The Black king at least has, stopped all of the checks at this point. You can't play Queen E4, and there's no other way to harass the Black king. But the White king, on the other hand,
Queen D2 checkmate in one. Game over.
Yikes.
Oh, so that's unfortunate for Ning there. She now moves to an 0-4 deficit. I think we should focus on some of the other matchups, in particular the Valentina Gunina matchup, as that one's close. Actually, let's go to the Chess Queen versus Bibi Sar. That's the Bishop's endgame here. Is White? Wait, she took with the Bishop inside with the pawn. I guess she didn't want to allow a Bishop F1 check that was available there. Alexandra, both sides are trying to push their past pawns here in this endgame. Whose pawn is going to seize the day?
Okay.
Oh!
Whoa, she blundered a bishop for a second. I thought they were just trading. Oh no. Poor Kosteniuk. Poor Kosteniuk. And Kosteniuk is extremely strong in blitz chess as well. I think she's one of the more active players online. So to see that kind of slip in, a tense endgame where both players are in a bullet time control, like 10 seconds, even less than that, it's pretty insane. Very unlikely.
Oh my gosh. And the whole thing was set up. She took on E6 with the bishop, which dragged her bishop away from this deep pawn. She could take with the pawn on E6 and threaten bishop B5 and E7. It looked like her pawn was stronger. And the next thing you know, she loses the bishop and loses the game. That's what happens in bullet scrambles over here. And D3 check, what a finish to that game. So let us go to their new game as they are 11 moves in. So out of the opening, Alexandra, we have a tied matchup. What do you make of this position here? It's quite close.
All right. So when I take a look here, I notice that there's a lot of imbalance between the different pawn structures. So White's pawn sides near her king actually look like they can become a weakness as well. There's definitely some holes in White's king side, even though there's no way to attack it as of right now. At the same time, White has the two bishops, which will be advantageous if the position starts opening up or if it gets into some type of an endgame. The pawn on E6 is currently under attack, so it does look like maybe it's going to be a target as well. And Black just plays King G8, which makes me think that Queen takes E6 cannot work because
Alexandra, I'm going to cut you off because I was wondering what in the world you were talking about, and I realized I said Gunina, and I put the other game, so this is on me. And that was hilarious. So I had the Kosteniuk game open. Now we're on the Gunina game, so we were going to switch there. But I was so confused. You said bishop pair, pawn E6 hanging.
There she goes. My co-commentator has finally lost it. I knew there would be a day. I just didn't know it would come so soon. She was just so young.
I have already forgiven her. You see that? That is maturity. When you understand the potential flaws of your co-commentator, you understand them, you respect her anyway, and you just want what's best for her. So we were talking about this game. Alexandra made amazing points. Do you want to rehash those a little bit?
Yeah, let's rehash them now that we're all looking at the same game. Sounds good to me. But the position has changed a little bit. Basically, what I was saying is the pawn structures are not symmetrical. So white has a slightly weaker king side. Black has to take care of the e6 pawn. White has the bishop pair, but the bishop pair is only going to be advantageous if the position opens up a little bit.
Totally with you here. And do you think King H1 was played to play G4? Like, is that a potential avenue of attack?
It has to be, but I think it was actually related earlier to something like queen takes c6 and bishop c5 being a bit menacing. Now it doesn't matter anymore because there's pawns protecting.
So I think you did that chess reverse thing. I said King H1, not King H8. This time I wasn't tricking you.
It's been a rough morning, Robert. So the knight just went to G1. It looks like she's trying to reroute that knight, maybe to F3, maybe to E5. Where do you think that knight is going?
I'm just having fun with you. And normally I would have just not said anything. But because I respect you so much and because we're good friends, I feel like, I can just crack a little joke here and there.
Of course.
So I agree.
I'm adding you to my blacklist after this, but that's fine.
I deserve
it.
it.
Yeah, laugh as if it's a joke, Robert.
Your blacklist. Call me Raymond Reddington. I'll live on that blacklist. What do you know about that? James Spader right here. Anyway, knight F3 is stopped for the time being because this pawn F4 is hanging. At least so it seems. So that's a good move by Tao Wen here to put pressure on White's position. So she drops her queen back to F2, does Gunina. That way she can play knight F3 and hop that pony into G5 or E5 without any of the tactics that were previously available to her opponent. So knight H5, what's going on here? Lots of pressure on that F4 square.
So that pawn is attacked 4 times. It's defended 3 times. I still have to do the math sometimes. So maybe White can play something like G3 to defend it one more time because you don't want to put your knight back on E2. I guess the other option is to play a little bit more aggressively. Can you push any of the pawns instead? F5 is a terrible idea because of knight G3, so that's winning. That doesn't work. G4 probably just drops a pawn. Knight F3. Okay, she found an aggressive move that I didn't even suggest because the knight's going to hop to G5, attack the knight and the pawn on E6.
I think your G4 move is also very good, I might add, because the pawn F4, just to show it very quickly, G4, knight H takes F4, bishop takes G6, removes the guard of this knight on F4. So you could have gotten away with that. It seems like Black's pieces were flimsy, so I think that was an availability. The knight couldn't take on G6 because it was pinned the queen. So instead we saw knight F3 with similar ideas, where if you take on F4, there's knight G5 ideas left and right that you have to be concerned about. And Black also doesn't have time here, Alexandra. It feels like White's just going to pick up this game.
Oof, she has less than 15 seconds on the clock. This is one of those positions where there's a lot of calculation and there's no way she's going to be able to play accurately with so little time.
Yeah, definitely not. Queen H4 here is the move I would play with my opponent under 10 since she plays it. Gunina has been vicious so far. Knight takes E6, remove the guard.
Yeah, she's not the only one, Robert.
Dang, coming right at me. I thought you were well rested, You had a little extra time to snooze than I did today, so.
I don't know what happened, Robert. I don't know what happened.
Oh, gosh.
But coming back to the good things, we're taking a look at this position. Never late. Okay, so rook e7. She's trying to bring in that rook on a8 into the game somehow. And White has a really good position, but is she going to find the accurate way to finish off her opponent with just 10 seconds?
Yep, bishop. Oh, she put her queen!
Oh, God.
Oh, no!
Oh, man. Am I rubbing off? First Kosteniuk blunders. Now we get a queen blunder from Gunina. I don't... Robert, is this normally what happens?
Wait a second. We have to go back because I think that she resigned too early. She should have played rook e to F3 because if bishop takes G5, there was rook F8 checkmate on the back ring. So she not only blundered a queen. I saw your stream yesterday, Alexandra. That game you blundered a queen and smother mated your opponent. This was an opportunity here to play on just a couple more moves because Black had to be careful to not allow this back ring checkmate. Of course, rook F7 or rook F8 would have saved the day, but still, you just play on a move, and that queen blunder was, that just doesn't happen to Gunina. Bishop takes G6 was a free knight that she could have taken. So instead of taking a piece, she blunders her queen, and then she goes down in the match. Let's go to the live position because she is, instead of being up 3-2, she is down 3-2.
Yikes. Well, she doesn't look too happy. Do you want to continue to stay on her second game?
Um,
Or do you want to check out some of the other competitors?
I just want to read a comment really quickly because it says, I thought Botez was commentating, not playing.
You know, sometimes I inspire the professionals. What can I say? Sometimes not in a good way.
You inspire me. You inspire me.
Yeah, okay.
No, I mean that seriously. That was wholeheartedly said.
I feel bad because I do those so often. I think it hurts more to see another player fall for that same trap. You know what I mean?
I get it. It's true because
Yeah.
you already know that pain that it caused you, even though you've turned it into a running meme of sorts. Like you have a name for that. It does hurt, and
It
so
does. And I
I
saw another good comment. Are we watching Women's Speed Chess Championship or Twitch Rivals again?
oh
I'm
oh
kidding. That's too far. I'm so sorry.
dang.
No, chat said it, not me. No. Okay. Backpedal. What game did you want to look at, Robert?
Let's go on to a different game and a different topic of conversation. How about the one between Anna Muzychuk and Munkhzul Turmuk? Because that match started 3-0 in Munkhzul's favor. Now it is 3.5, 1.5. And Alexandra, as we look at this position that's on the board right now, I like the bishop on g7 more than I like the knight on f3. And isn't black actually up a pawn?
Yes, black is up a pawn, although two of them are doubled on the H file. But hey, an extra pawn is still an extra pawn, and they're not under attack for right now. I imagine there's no way white wants to trade off queens here because only thing that white has, okay, not the only thing that white has going here, but I was going to say black's king side was a little bit more open, so I thought she might want to try to keep the queen on for more pressure, but you know, she decided to trade it off. Okay.
No, I completely agreed with you, though. I actually think that this is not a great decision for Munkhzul, who played so well in the first time before. Because as we get here, black is up a pawn. And so without the queens on the board, black can actually start pushing her pawns much more easily. And that's going to be a big problem. For example, like she played rook c8, then maybe there's even b5, a5, b4, things of this nature, where you're just pressing forward on the queen side with no risk to your king. With queens on the board, maybe there's a potential for an attack, but without them, there's just nothing to speak of going well for white. Just I would play knight to d7 and hope that my opponent misses knight to b6 with a nasty fork. Although it's really obvious, why else would I play knight d7? It threatens nothing besides knight b6.
Yeah, I mean, knight d7 maybe if your opponent has like 5 seconds, but not, 2 minutes. That seems a little bit too much like wishful thinking, but I'm getting the vibe that white is just trying to hold a draw here.
Yes, and you will have to work real hard to try to make a draw in this position because it feels like black just has a free hand and is up a minute on the clock. Anna Muzychuk is doing well in this 3-minute portion. And let's see, let's put the just platitudes and this is looking good for black aside and come with ideas. She went h5, which does open up h6 for her bishop if that's one of her ideas. She can also push this pawn all the way to h4, which kind of cements white's pawn structure in place. And when you have double pawns, inherently you have an open file. And perhaps eventually she would like to slide her rook to g8, and with a pawn h4, it has backward pawn on g2 that can be quite vulnerable. I think that's a long-term plan and not happening anytime soon. It's just something that I wanted to point out.
Fair enough. So white is activating her king now as well. G3, king G2, playing it very safe. I guess she's just trying to make any kind of move. She's at 30 seconds. I guess if I were white here, I would try to just keep the position as closed off as possible and hope that Anna plays slowly and blunders in time pressure.
Pretty fair. I mean, that's really
sounds actually like my strategy every game.
I don't think so, but I do think that's a good idea here because it's not like white has really that many options. By the way, rook e4 at some point would have been extremely dangerous because if the rook's trade on e4, the knight was losing space real quick. Another benefit of playing h5 is you took the g4 square away. That point is sort of unimportant for the moment. I would play d4 now, just break open this bishop and needs to get more active. And now feels like the right time.
D4, right? Because if white decides to take back and then the bishop is going to be able to recapture the pawn and also put pressure on B2, she decides instead to go for A5, which makes me think that she's preparing B4.
Hmm.
Um, how risky do you want to be here? Do you want to play knight takes E6?
I
No.
do.
Okay.
No, I actually really like that. I was actually thinking about that too. And you know me, not my pieces. I'm happy to sacrifice them. I think
Mm-hmm.
that if white just sits back, you're going to lose the game. So you need to make your opponent's life as difficult as possible. Well, now knight takes e6 is a real threat because the bishop on f6 is hanging. She moves her bishop out the way. I just don't think that white can sit and do nothing. Bishop d6 now. You've changed the diagonals. Here comes b4 or d4. You can choose whichever one suits you more. And actually, Alexandra, you play quite a deal of bullet. Maybe playing a move like d4, b4 now allows white's plan to be a bit easier. So perhaps you sit on the position for a little bit with king g6.
That's a fair point. You basically just throw it back to your opponent for a second, and try to think on their time. But no, she did go for B4 right away. I guess this is pretty straightforward also because there's a lot of trades and there is some increment. So Anna is getting some time back, and now she's just up a pawn in a double rook ending. But this is still somewhat tricky to win, no?
Oh, it certainly is. You need to be able to start pushing your pawns, and here comes d4, e5. You need to somehow get your pawns going because black's rooks are very active. White's rooks are quite passive. She plays rook e4, so please go rook e3. Let's swap off a pair of rooks. And f6 now can be played if you want to. I'm just trying to figure out how to get e5, e4. That's the one thing I want. Is that too much to ask for?
No, I mean, you see forking potential and you're trying to figure out how to do it. Um, and I guess the issue is as soon as e5 is played, d5 is hanging, which is why Anna brought her king to d6, because now she'll be able to do it in the future.
She will indeed. And the downside of playing f5 is your e6 pawn requires a little bit more defense. Like this rook can come to a6 and then try to pile up pressure on this e6 pawn, but the rook on e4 is shielding. Wait, Anna has 3 seconds. Rook e4 back. She does go. Oh my gosh, king f6.
She just needs to get some time. I think that's what she's going for. 4 seconds, 3 seconds. I mean, both players in crazy time pressure. But the funny thing is, now it's actually easier for white to play this because she's just shuffling her rooks.
Oh,
Anna's the one who has to push and prove she's better.
oh, here comes the d pawn though.
Oh,
And
there you go. There you go. That pawn
nice
is
attempt though
coming.
with the g pawn. Oh, she almost flagged her. That was a really good bullet attempt there by playing g4, g5 check.
Yep,
And rook
break those
e6.
pre-moves.
Oh my gosh. That was so sneaky. Whoa. The game ended like so
Yeah,
quickly and a new game replaced it. But that was really sneaky.
I mean, you're giving too much credit there because Anna had like 3 seconds. You're not going to break a pre-move when there's increment with 3 seconds. But, you know, she had to try. She had to try. So I'll give her credit because that was the best option.
You know, it's fun to see things like that. As you're saying, it's the best option. She didn't have a choice. She was dead lost if she did nothing. And so she tried to win on time. Oh, speaking of winning on time, I'm going to switch games really quickly because I just saw a game finish and it was a win on time for Yifan, but it was also a great position for her. Opposite colored bishops with the attack and 2 extra pawns to boot. Yifan continues her dominance in this match against her compatriot. I think this may be the last we see of this match. Let's move on to a different one. And what's going on? Kosteniuk has a lead over Bibisara, and I'm just going to tune into that game real quick. Oh, Kosteniuk actually just won her game. She's at 4.5, 2.5. It's a 2-game lead for her. And Gunina and Tao win. That one's at 3. I think let's go to that one. That game's 3 apiece. So
Did you say Gunina? Because last time I was looking at the wrong game.
I did say Gunina. We can go to a different game if you think we'll stick on Gunina down the stretch and you want to start with a different match for now.
No, I was just teasing. Okay, so we're looking at the Gunina game. I'm here now as well. Robert, I noticed 2 double pawns. Is that e5 pawn gonna fall at some point?
Well, she answered your question with a big nope. Not a yep. That's a nope.
That's a nope. Okay, so f4. This is a very common pawn structure. The way when you have 2 double pawns and to push on either f4, sometimes you see it on d4. And generally, what do you think of this kind of pawn structure? I've studied it with quite a few computer engines, and I always get mixed evaluations.
I think in this particular position, for the moment, black. Angel will probably say I don't have it on. Probably say, oh, black's a bit better because double pawns tend not to be very well liked by the Indians. The benefit of having double pawns, we talk about this quite regularly, is the open file. Here, white has the length of the file open to her rook, and she would like to be able to double and make progress. Another downside of this position, though, is this pawn on a4 is one that is potentially overextended. Knight c5 right now attacks the a4 pawn. Also, this knight can jump into e4, and it feels like this bishop on g6 is just in the right place at the right time, controlling many important light squares. And the typical thing you see with like an e4 f5 or like a g4 f5 trying to break forward for an attack, that won't work here. What with the e5 pawn needing permanent protection, as otherwise it will just fall.
Okay, so that pawn is going to be stuck on e3 in that case, and the knight on a2 is looking extremely awkward. Not to be a bully, but it's going to have to come back to c3 at some point. It's not only on the rim, but it's also on a very passive square. I guess she's slow playing this.
Why didn't she play knight c3 instead of b3? And you make a great point that the knight on a2 is not really helping out in the action. So after knight c5, this knight could have just gone to c3 right away. And I'm wondering why she didn't do that. Because after b3, rook d8, h3, like, is she going to play knight c3 now, or she just doesn't want to move that knight?
Yeah, this, when you watch some AlphaZero games and there's like some super unintuitive plans, that's kind of what this is like for me. I guess b3 does make sense though. She wanted to protect a4, but it just always seems so natural to bring a piece back that needs to be developed. And usually when you move a pawn, you always also create a weakness, right?
You know what I think actually, yes, but you know what I'm thinking about is that maybe after knight c3, she was worried about knight e4 offering a knight exchange, because when you have these double pawns, just having bishops is typically not the pieces you want to have on the board. You'd like to have your knights, because knights can hop into some of the weak squares. Whereas look at this bishop on e1. That's not getting to d6 ever. This bishop on c4 is on a light square. So I think she was avoiding the trades, and that's why she kept this knight on a2. She's refrained from moving it closer to the action in the center because she doesn't actually want to trade it. So interesting decision-making by Gunina. It is a tied match, and she's also up 1:20 here, Alexandra. What is happening?
Yeah, would you rather play with 147 and a slightly worse position, or 20 seconds and slightly
clock.
better?
That's all I need to say.
There you go. Robert Hess, a man of the people. True. So this position does, I mean, yeah, I would absolutely take white's position here, even though it's worse. I think white doesn't have that many weaknesses to the point where it's so bad. I know you said knight c3 you don't want to trade, but at least if you recapture back with your bishop, then it seems very hard for black to really make any progress. E3 can always be defended as what? Oh, it couldn't be defended because the knight was going to take.
Yeah, that was not what I thought was going to happen. So
isn't black the one supposed to blunder in time pressure?
Yes, and I think that still may happen with f5, e6 kind of stuff. F5 right now. Definitely F5.
Yeah, you have to go for F5. Agreed. F takes G6, maybe. It seems like the most aggressive approach here. Your opponent has 11 seconds. You want to make it as hard as possible. The F7 pawn is under attack, but knight F4 just completely blocks that threat. That's so sad.
Yeah, and actually you can't attack your opponent on G4. You would like to play G4 back to G3, but no can do. And Queen B4 played by Tao Wen here. She brings her queen in to maybe to D2 next. F4 well guarded. You can play G5 to help this out. There is some opportunity, Alexandra, of opposite color bishop endgames that should be manageable for white. You are down 2 pawns, but there are plenty of times with opposite color bishops, even being down 2 pawns, you can still hold. This may not be one of those games. I'm just thinking about the possibilities here.
Right. And in order for that to happen, I mean, she would need to trade off the dark squared bishop for the knight and the 2 queens off, and that would give her some solid drawing chances. So I don't think that black will be so kind.
Yeah. I kind of regret saying, yep, clock. I was trying to be a man of the people, and I really regret it.
It's okay, Robert. She might still come back. Although now she has almost the same time and she's down a pawn. Interesting. So opposite color bishop, we know there's drawing chances. How does the dynamic work between the bishop pair and the bishop and the knight usually in endgames?
Yeah, the bishop pair is much stronger because it can control a lot of space. The problem tends to be when you have just a bishop versus a knight, because the knight can hop from color complex to oh, that was a pawn. And that's exactly the point. The bishop was on d8 and it still attacked a5 while putting pressure on g5. The bishop was just a long range piece. And I would not be surprised if Gunina somehow won this game, even though she's still down a pawn.
It's interesting because knights are also known to be super tricky in low time controls because they move away like no other, and it's often hard to see forks. But these bishops are traveling so quickly across the board that I can't tell what I would prefer to have.
Yeah, knights are tricky, and okay, she could have taken on e7 and made a draw by taking on c6.
Sorry, it looked like she was about to flag. Black was about to flag.
Oh my gosh, this is actually getting just a pure time scramble. Do you take on e7?
Okay, I'm not looking at the clock anymore.
She does it. She does it.
I would have a heart attack.
She took on e7, and now she can just pre-move the rest of the way. Like bishop e4, bishop a8, bishop e4, bishop h1. You can pre-move that for the rest of the game and never lose. Oh my gosh, they made a draw. They made a draw. So they're done with the 3-minute portion. Let's go over to the chess queen. That's Alexandra Kosteniuk versus Bibisara Assaubayeva, because that is 4.5, 3.5, and they are the only game remaining in the 3+1. Remember, when the match clock is up, you see it says time up, but if there's a game in progress, that game is allowed to be completed. And for Kosteniuk, you may not want that to be the case because you are up a point, and you may just want to go out to the bullet. But Alexandra, this position here, are there enough pieces attacking and protecting the e4 square?
Well, you know how I like to count. So there's 3 pieces protecting, 3 pieces attacking it. So the pawn is okay for now. I don't see another way black is going to put pressure on that pawn unless d5 is possible at some point. Can we play knight d5 at some point and try to cement that backwards pawn on d6?
Yes, you absolutely can. And she may be setting that up because you put a rook on a3, likely just to control more of the c file. b4 was a very committal move. Sometimes you regret playing moves like that. Here, she can play knight d5, but she can also play knight a4 and try to bring the knight to b6, lay claim to that square, and perhaps get the bishop out there. So I think knight a4 looks kind of nice. There's rook to b1, a little tamer than what I was looking at.
And both players are actually managing their time super well. They both have, a little over a minute and a half. It's a close position, but it doesn't seem like they've been sitting too much until maybe now.
It's true. And I feel like you can be led astray in close positions because d5 at some moment will be on the radar. It doesn't work yet. I can just take with the pawn, but with the b4 pawn hanging, which attacks the rook and the knight and all this stuff. Okay, b5 hits the queen.
So Kosteniuk decides to be the first person to push. But yeah, that's one of the tricky parts of close positions, especially in blitz. You never know when it's going to come. And there's always, a small difference in when it makes sense to play in the position.
Yeah.
But I guess Kosteniuk is the one being aggressive here.
Although I was looking at your move, knight to... Oh, I don't like bishop d3 because now d5 looks so powerful.
And this is the moment because it attacks the rook on a3.
I thought you were about to sing to me.
It attacks the rook on
a3. No, this is the moment.
Oh.
Like the ceiling can't hold us? All right, never mind.
I thought you just wanted a chess musical. Either way, I shouldn't be the one singing.
You know there is the chess musical, right?
I did hear about that. Wait.
Whoa.
Why is everyone going for these today? And now isn't there... Oh, I thought bishop e6 worked for a second. Sorry.
You're all good. And this was an interesting choice. I don't think that Bibisara had to allow this. She could have dropped her queen back to b8 peacefully. Instead, she's like, 2 rooks are better than a queen. That's what they told me. My coach always told me that. But when you have a material imbalance like this, it's about king safety. And I see queen g5, queen h4. I'm like, wait, is that king on h7 really that safe?
It doesn't look too safe. And this is the kind of pawn structure that white has with f7 and g6 that really leaves some holes for the king side. And the bishop and the queen are going to work so well together, especially with discovery attack. Is there any way to defend here? That looks like she's trapping her own king, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks like a self-mate.
And now bishop f8.
Oh my gosh. No, that just wasn't Bibisara's game. I feel so badly for her because she played really well and she had an opportunity to level the match score. She helped mated there. Like if we go back to queen to g, the last game was knight c5, moving away from the king side. Here comes queen g5. You can't play f6 because the g6 pawn is hanging. So she plays rook to g8. I don't really know what a better move was. It's a tough position for black, but obviously, what she did was really a sad thing because I have no suggestions. So because I have no suggestions, Alexandra, we are going to go to a break, and when we return, we will have the bullet portion, and we'll see if some of these close matchups will end up in a tiebreak, and we have more chess ahead. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be back with more FIDE-Chess.com Women's Speed Chess Championship action in just a few. And we return for the bullet segment of the Women's Speedchess Championship. This is the opening round of the fourth Grand Prix leg. Alexandra, we see matches that are quite close, with the exception of Yifan against Ning here. So we will focus on Gunina versus Tawen. We will have Anna Muzychuk taking on Munkhzul, and Alexandra Kosteniuk goes out to a 2-point lead thanks to that checkmate we saw at the conclusion. So do you have any predictions for these three matches?
Well, we're changing the time control to bullet now, right? So it's kind of hard to make predictions because there could be a huge gap between someone's blitz and their bullet. Although with the 1 second increment, it feels a little bit different. There's going to be less dirty flagging, right?
Well, we think so, but there have been swindles. There have been just sometimes the players get flagged anyway. The 1 second, it feels like a lot, especially to people who only play a 1-0, no increment bullet. But then you kind of get misled and you still end up struggling in time trouble. So I don't know. It's I'm gonna go with, I think that Kosteniuk will keep her lead. I think that Munkhzul will keep her lead. And I'm gonna go with Gunina because she's been amazing all throughout the WSCC.
Fair enough. Well, I see that you're looking at Gunina's game. No fireworks right away. White's position on the king side is a little bit awkward, the two double pawns, but she just played bishop b1. It looks like she's going for queen d3 at some point, just to have that checkmate threat in store. F6. So is black weakening her king side with that move?
The answer is an absolute yes. And look at that. Wait, does that work? F takes e5, queen h7 checks one check.
Uh-oh. And you can't play bishop g6 after because the knight is protecting. Rook e3 is going to be met by e4, so you can't even play rook f3 after.
So she takes an e5 first, which is smart because then rook e3, your idea is coming. But I think she just misjudged the position. Queen c2 or queen d3 threatened mate on h7 immediately. But once that knight was removed, the king can escape to f7. And I don't see a checkmate because I can always interpose a check with my knight and then try to run my king away. And here, like, can you play rook h8? Does that trap the queen? Like, rook 8. Oh my gosh, it's complicated.
Okay, knight f5 looks like now she's trying to trap the queen. So she's cutting off the queen from ever being able to retreat back. And look at the time difference. 15 seconds to 42. White is really struggling here. You called it, Robert. There goes the queen. So many queens lost today.
Oh, she didn't play it. Now g4, and then take on g7. Oh, she's taking f5. See, g4 actually had the danger of almost trapping the knight there. And this is a topsy-turvy game where now you get a third pawn for the piece. I take on h6. Black is still better in objective terms. But Alexandra, time scramble up 35 seconds to 10. Feels like black has to be heavily favored now.
Yeah, I mean, she's up a bishop and somehow her king made the journey all the way to the other side of the board. There's no problems in terms of potential checkmates. And she's up on time. Absolutely. Gunina's got this in the bag.
Indeed. And the rook on d4 was a really smart play by Tawen because d4 is what black would love to accomplish and get his bishop free. You would love to throw the d pawn off the board. You can't do that. And actually, I'm not entirely sure how black is going to make progress here because white's kind of sitting on the position. Now a4 threatens potential a5. All right, look at this potential attack for white now.
Well, you might be getting a little bit ahead of yourself because look at that back rank attack that is about to happen. I guess queen g1 and then the rook can come to f1 or e1. But I agree with you. It's the best plan she could try to go for there. She's almost going to flag. She's almost going to get mated. You might as well try to be aggressive and hope your opponent slips up, but not enough.
No, that was really nice by Gunina. I started seeing pawns flying at the black king. I got worried, and maybe I shouldn't have. I should have said, hey, Gunina has what it takes. She wins that game with the black pieces. She moves to a lead in the match. I see that Bivisara won the first bullet game in that match. So let's switch on over to Kosteniuk versus Bivisara Assaubayeva because that one is also a 1 point. Whoa, what a position to turn into after knight to d5, hitting the queen. The f6 square is now under attack twice. Alexandra, do we think that Kosteniuk knows that she's got this one?
I mean, after I thought queen h5 was the move to go for at some point. But she's up 2 pawns. One of them is doubled. Okay, sorry, 1 pawn. I actually don't know because with 37 seconds, like she might feel that she has a better position, but there's no way to execute the checkmate right away. And it looks like she's going to be playing almost up a pawn.
Yeah, and it's not like the White's king is that safe either. There are some sacrifice on h3 and things like that. So
Mhm.
I'm with you that it feels like Kosteniuk missed her best chances.
Yeah, at first I thought that queen h5 looked really crushing, but maybe it didn't. And in that case, if there wasn't some way to take advantage of the weakness on Black's king earlier on, and Black was able to make it on into an endgame, then it's not so easy for sure.
I'm totally with you there, and I'm not just saying that because I enjoy agreeing with you. I was looking at that position and thinking that the knight was actually more valuable than the rook that she took. And it's weird to say that because you're like, wait, I could take your rook for just a knight. Let me do that. But the attack, the rook wasn't actually helping defend. The knight was helping to attack. And I know it's a bullet game. We can't look at every single line. That was available to Kosteniuk. And now we have an end game, even material. And it's going to be about who plays better under the duress of time pressure. I think that this game should just be a draw. But you see a position like this where the rook comes to d7. Is Black going to play rook to b6? No, she plays a rook to e4 and over to b4. Okay, that was smart.
Right. And again, this is a draw in classical, probably even in blitz. But in bullet, there's that slight chance that somebody's going to blunder. But if there would be a blunder here, maybe it would be something like losing one of the pawns or checking the king and then trading off the rook. I don't know. It's hard to see any tricky blunders here.
Yeah, this one looks like it's going just to be a draw. And weirder things have happened in bullet than this game not being a draw, but it does seem to be extremely level in this one. I'm starting to like White's position a little more because of the king activity. And if you ever say move your pawn to a5, there's rook b6 check. Now, with all these checks, bringing the king back to f2, say, okay, you've stabilized. You don't have to worry about too much. This should just be a draw. But this is bad news for Bibisara in that the match is taking up so much time.
Yeah, this game is definitely taking a while, and it's really close. 5.5, 4.5. I mean, we definitely felt like Kosteniuk was the favorite in this matchup, right?
She still remains the favorite, and I'm actually going because this game does look like a complete draw, and I think they'll play a bunch more. The game between Anna Muzychuk and Munkhzul Termunk. Anna is down a point in the match, but look at this game where she's going after Munkhzul's king. And that king is never going to find shelter. Knight d5 or knight f5, hitting the d6 pawn, hitting the queen. Anna Muzychuk is also up 30 seconds on the clock, and she's probably thinking, hey, Robert, I thought we were friends. I heard you say that you thought Munkhzul was going to take this match heading into the bullet. Not so fast. Look at this position, Alexandra.
Yeah, that pawn on d6 is hanging, but she doesn't even have to take it right away. She could have also, maybe brought her rook into action or take it, and now she's going to be able to win material. There's just so many different paths to success here.
Yeah, and now White is up 3 pawns and is about to tie the match. So Anna she should be able to convert this. Knights are tricky. We say that often. You don't want to fall into any kind of knight fork, but with so much extra time and with a superior position and still over 2 minutes remaining in the match clock, and she just wins her 4th extra pawn.
I think she has more than enough pawns and more than enough seconds to win this game.
And she'll tie the match up at 4.5 each. We see Kosteniuk at 6-5. Valentina Gunina up 2 points in her match. So Gunina looking like she is going to take that one. And we have a tied matchup between Anna Muzychuk and Munkhzul. So let's stay here while we can. It feels like the matchup to look at, though. I'm keeping an eye out on the Kosteniuk game as well. Oh my gosh, that game is really interesting. I don't know what to do. Tell me where to go, Alexandra.
Let's go to the Kosteniuk game and then come back to this one because it's a little earlier on.
Okay, let's go to the Kosteniuk game. And what is happening here? It looks like there's a potential for the attack for Kosteniuk, and Bibisara needs to win this game. It may very well be the last game of this match. I feel like Black is just doing great here with all the pieces staring down at the White king.
Right. I mean, I guess she has some chances to escape because there's no immediate blow once again. But f5, f4 at some point in the future, she moved her king to h1 to get off of that pin file, king g7 so that she could bring another rook into the attack. I mean, there are some chances that the pieces are going to be traded off. And
Bishop e5 here. Speaking of don't trade.
Oh God.
You were right though, because that's exactly what Kosteniuk was going for. And then unfortunately for Bibisara, she walked into this just win of a rook.
Okay, well, I mean, it was already a very tough position, so I understand why she fell for that blunder. But it's unfortunate because it felt like this is a hard position to prove in bullet that you can win, and she could have tried to play a little bit more solidly, but she just didn't see the pin. It happens.
Whew. Yeah, it's a shame because she needed the win, but for Kosteniuk, well played match indeed. Let's go back over to first. How much time is up? The time is up. So let's go back to the Munkhzul game against Muzychuk, as that matchup is tied, if I'm not mistaken. And it's 4.5, 4.5. Don't let the scoreboard right now mislead you. It will update soon.
Yes, it is 4.5, 4.5. The position is even on material, but white has that pass pawn that is really intimidating right now. So,
Ooh. Yeah, that pawn does look scary because you can't take on e7 so easily. Then the pawn takes e7. Now you can do it because you have enough pieces covering the square.
right. So if you're able to trade off that pawn, then all of a sudden the position gets a lot more even. This looks like it should be a draw. Maybe now black is a little bit better because the c pawn is more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only, I mean, that's the biggest asymmetry in this position.
Yeah, but ultimately, queen, rook, 4 pawns apiece. Ooh, I don't like that move f4. It just feels like it weakens squares on the king side. Not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it just feels like it gives black all of these winning chances in endgame that you didn't have before. King f6 coming into f5. Here it comes. I mean, Anna keeps the rook on d2 tied down the c2 pawn, and she just says h4. I am not going to allow you to connect your pawn to the king side. This is masterful endgame technique thus far, Alexandra.
Yeah, she's playing this incredibly and so quickly. 20 seconds to 10 seconds on the clock. Okay, the g2 pawn is hanging in exchange for the c pawn, and now what are we going to do about that h3 pawn? There's no way to protect it.
That was,
and the rook can always come to c3 and protect from behind. Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
No, that's exactly what's happening. You're speaking it into existence, and now Anna is up 2 pawns. She could probably even sacrifice her rook at some point for that c pawn, which is what she may have to do. She'll win because her king and her kingside pawns will do the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she could, let's say that she sacrificed the rook for the c pawn. At some point she's going to be winning that regardless, even with the 3 pawns versus the rook.
She will. The one thing you have to be careful about is if somehow white can blockade these pawns, and Anna's not allowing that to happen because she's pushing her pawns the way she has, and then have your rook tied down to stopping the promotion. But here she can play rook a8, nice. And that way she can bring her rook down, then even bring her king up, rook a2 check.
And that Ukrainian school of endgames, you know? You know these like the back of your hand.
The rook is behind the queenie square, which is very important.
Rook nice try, yeah.
Anna Muzychuk, she enters this down 2 points. She was down 4.5, 2.5. She wins 3 straight games, and she takes the match. This game is not going to count. I don't know if she knew that. And let's see the look on her face. It must be one of absolute relief. Oh, she just runs off camera there. Oh, Alexandra, she deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, no, that was an incredible win. Super impressed with Anna Muzychuk as usual. I mean, both players played very well, but to be able to squeeze a win out of that game, wow. Yeah, a lot of poker faces from the chess players here. Wait, do we still have one game going?
Oh, we do. I didn't even notice that. It's Yifan taking on her compatriot here. And what's the deal?
Man, Yifan is putting on a clinic. 7.5 to 1.5. That is absolutely crushing.
Bishop c5 check and bishop d6. Look at this. Nice. That's a beautiful tactical shot that she just executed here, and now she's winning this.
Yeah, she could have also played rook c8 and win the bishop, but I guess she has 2 seconds, so it doesn't really matter. She should just play quickly. She has a pass pawn. No way she's going to lose this.
Yeah, she's already won the match, so at this point, it's just beefing up the score, which is actually somewhat important, because if there is some sort of tie, the second tiebreaker, the first tiebreaker is number of Grand Prix legs won, and if let's say Yifan wins this, the second tiebreaker is total game points. So you want to win as many games as possible. She does not want to allow even a draw here. She wants to get that full point and continue her march towards the super final if she can qualify.
Okay, and this is somewhat still tricky because it's going to be hard if white somehow wins the a4 pawn.
This is one of these positions that actually is close to, I'm not certain. Sometimes these are theoretically drawn. And this might be
Interesting.
it.
Even with being a pawn up, just there's no way to make progress here because the bishop is keeping the king from the checkmating square. Oh, now king b2 and a3. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And here comes the king in.
Okay, she pulled it off. Maybe it was just because white made a mistake. I mean, it must have been.
Yeah, the key was to keep the king away, and the dark square bishop was holding it off from entering. And then it all went downhill from there. It's a bullet game. These things happen. I do want to, before we take a quick break as we head into the next set of matches, that move bishop c5 check and then bishop to d6 with check was so awesome that I want to show it very quickly. In this position, these rooks are on the same line as one another, and that means if the bishop's out the way, you can take a rook. Bishop c5 check, force the king to c7 to protect this rook, and then bishop d6 check. It wasn't just about trading the rooks, it was actually about winning it. The king has to take the bishop, and then the rook is no longer defended. That was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that was a very cute tactic there.
Well, Alexandra, all of these matches came to a conclusion without the need for tie breaks, which gives us the opportunity to stretch our legs, grab some water. So everybody, we will be back in about 90 seconds with the second set of matches in the fourth Grand Prix leg of the FIDE Women's Speed Chess Championship. Long time no see, everybody. Just kidding. It's Speed Chess. We're back. We are about to see the second set of matches get underway. And Alexandra, I usually make my co-commentators make a prediction about the matches. I'm not going to do that to you. Just kidding. Hey, so what do you think is going to happen in these four matches?
Wow, Robert. All right. Well, what I think is going to happen in these matches, so Tatev is, I'm going to start from the bottom up. Tatev is extremely strong in online chess, but I haven't seen too much of Harika Dranavali. Can you tell me a little bit more about her style of play?
Harika is unbelievably solid, and she will make the most of even your slightest inaccuracy. In fact, they played each other in the previous Grand Prix leg, and Harika won that match quite handily. And so it's a clash of styles, if you will.
A clash of styles. Okay. Well, in a rapid format, Tatev is incredible at tactics. So I think she is going to be who I pick for that matchup. And again, yeah, I guess I'm a lot more familiar with some of the American players, obviously living in the US and Canada. For example, Irina Krush. Can you tell me a bit more about her opponent?
Well, Sarsadat Kademal Sharia, she is an amazingly talented player from Iran. She has performed very well throughout the WSCC. She's made 2 semifinals, and this is her 3rd Grand Prix leg. She ended up getting 4th place both times, but she scored some upsets. She beat Ju June in a match. And so Sara against Irina is actually a rematch of a previous Grand Prix leg as well, where Irina was down 3 games and won a bunch of bullet games to make a comeback, but ultimately Sara beat her in the tiebreakers.
All right. Well, with that information, I guess I'm going to vote for the previous winner. So Sara in that match. I think it's also a little bit difficult to play somebody who you know you've lost to before, right?
It sounded personal almost, where like you're
No,
asking me to
I'm
talk
not
about my
asking
feelings.
you. I'm not asking you to do that, Robert. No.
It is hard. Yeah.
And I know the games are starting in 1 minute. So instead of predictions, can you maybe do like a brief intro of the other 4 players left over as well?
For sure. We have Zansaya Abdulmalik, who is a very, very talented player. She struggled in this WSCC in the opening Grand Prix leg. She lost to Anna Ushanina quite handily. It was a very one-sided matchup that started Anna Ushanina's tear, her dominance throughout the WSCC. And I think that she'll have better form today against Daisy Corey from Peru. So it's a player from Kazakhstan versus a player from Peru. It's great to see the international flair of the game of chess. And Daisy Corey has been the player with the best virtual background. So when we get her on camera later, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
All
and
right.
She's very sharp, especially in the quicker time controls. So I think that one will come down to the wire. And between Humpy Kunera and Olga Giria, I don't think those players need too much of an introduction. Humpy, as soon as she came back to the world of chess, she's done nothing but impress. She has won several events in classical chess over the board that she's played in, and she's not quite as, I would say, experienced in the online formats as some of the other players in this event. And Olga Giria is somebody who could stop her in her tracks.
Okay, well, the games are starting in 15 seconds. I'm sorry I threw that back to you, Robert. You are kind of like a walking encyclopedia of chess, though, so it's always helpful to get that information from you.
Wow, that was one of the kindest things you've ever said to me.
Oh, that would be such a compliment in your eyes.
I don't take it as an insult, that's for sure. And these players are all great. Really, they've done so much for the game of chess, and they have obviously their own set of accomplishments. And it's going to be 4 excellent matches, I feel like. We saw some lopsided matches in the first set. Well, really only one. That was Yifan. And I don't think we have that dynamic in these matches. Of course, it can happen. Someone gets on a bad day, someone else is in great form. But I think that these matches will remain quite close.
Okay, well, and so this is leg 4 in the Women's Speed Chess Championship. So after we get the results from these, only the winner is going to be moving on to the next round, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Well, there's a lot at stake, and we see that the games are getting started. So are you starting off with Sara's game?
I have that one open just because that's what came up. It populated, but I'm happy to go wherever you feel is right. You are going to steer this ship.
Okay, well, we're already there, so we might as well look a little bit. So we have a Queen's Gambit accepted here. And what is usually very classical in these positions, you see that Irina's going for that queenside attack there. And White has more central control so far. D5 is something that White has to consider at some point. When do you think, what conditions need to be right for that move to be made? Damn it.
Well, this one, I guess, this is still in opening theory. So you can trade on D5 and then put the queen on B6. You do not want to leave the queen on the same line as a rook, which is why she just quickly jetted her queen over there. And White has gained space in the center, but your point still holds. With the pawns A6, B5, C5, Black has made some progress over here. I would be worried about the C5 pawn. That's typically what my concern is in these QGAs.
Yeah, fair enough. And we see that Sarah is already ganging up on that C pawn. The only other way so far to attack it would be something like Queen C2 and B4, but she doesn't even have to play that because even without winning the pawn right away, she is tying Black's most valuable piece to its defense.
Right. And the bishop on D5 is set there with the pawn E4. I'd probably play knight to B4 here because I don't like how much space White has. I feel like as Black, your pieces are quite restricted. And so by playing knight to b4, once this bishop comes off d5, the a2 pawn is also one that I'm sort of eyeing. And I don't know if that drops a pawn. It might, because the c5 pawn does need that queen's defense, and I'm dragging the queen back to b7. But it does feel like a move that gives black more play, more life in the position, rather than just sitting and being quite stuck, honestly, for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you're pointing out the most active piece in White's camp. And if you're able to trade it off, it does seem like a great idea here. Arena is sitting quite a bit. So she's already down almost a minute on Sarah. Do you think that's going to be significant already on move 16?
Well, if this liquidates in the way that it has the potential to, then she probably will be very happy that she spent a minute on that move, knight to b4. And we see the first trade on b7, a3 played. And the point now is if knight c6, then I can take on c5. So the pawn is hanging. But if I throw in rook takes d1 first, if you take with the queen, then I have this intermezzo rook to d8, or if the queen takes on d1. So you're going to take with the rook on d1. And now when I go knight c6, you're no longer threatening my pawn on c5. So this was the correct move order by Irina. She was wise to spend her time.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. There's always that critical moment. And if you're able to think there, you're not just thinking to make one move, but it shapes your plan for like the next 10 or so.
Certainly the case. And even in this position, speaking of not just the next move, it's all about coming up with ideas. Where does e5 was just played by Sarah? Where does white want her pieces? Where does black want hers? And then another question is, what pieces should I try to trade? Should I play rook to d8, or does the rook trade help white? Should I push my pawn to c4, or does that, it's advancing up what looks like a passed pawn, an extra pawn on the queen side, or does that give the d4 square, something like that? So you should ask yourself, move after move, what your plan is and what the consequences are of the ideas you're trying to do here.
Right. Well, it seemed like Irina thought that trade favors her. And the biggest weakness in White's position so far is actually that pawn on e5, which is very advanced, but because it's so advanced, it's going to be difficult to protect it with another pawn. So something like f4 eventually would weaken White's kingside quite a bit. At the same time, black can't immediately put pressure, so it's going to be more of a long-term weakness if white combines it with another plan.
It will for sure. And one thing I want to point out is if you cut the board, you see that white has an extra pawn from the E through H file. So this is white's extra pawn E5, and this is black's extra pawn in C5. Black's pawns are more mobile. You can see that C4 can already be played, whereas Alexandra was talking about this knight on E6. Knights are great blockading pieces. The knight says, nope, you're not pushing that E pawn. You can't do it. And even trying to play, as you said, F4 and things like that takes a lot of effort and will weaken the side where your king is. So I would not play c4 just yet. I don't want to allow knight d4 trading off the knights. It just is important to note how flexible is our structure. And for black, it does feel like it is a little bit more flexible. And you see Sarah going deep in the think tank now, trying to come up with a move.
Right, but even for Irina, if you don't want to push c4 right away, it is difficult to find a plan here because your pawns are basically on their optimal squares. If you push them forward anymore, you're also going to create weaknesses. The knight and the bishop are pretty cozy. How do you come up with some ideas forward?
One idea is to go king f8, king e8, just bringing the king towards the center. In endgames, the king can be an aggressive piece. And something, well, now actually my queen may go into e4. As soon as you moved your knight away from the defense of this e5 pawn, and she plays c4, I guess this is well timed because now the knight can't go to d4 as it would have had it still been on f3. Mm-hmm. But my essential point was going to be that in the end game, the king can be used as an aggressive piece, whereas early stages of the game, it's just you need to safeguard your king at all costs. Here, that king may just go to f8 and e8, trying to work its way toward the center. And a queen trade, even though I wouldn't go all in for that queen trade for black, it does actually favor black in most of these situations because of your extra pawn on the queen side.
Yeah, and usually when you have this 3 versus 2 pawn structure on one of the sides, you can use it to trade off all of the pawns and create an extra pass pawn. But on top of that, now she's also going to have some holes in white's kingside pawns.
You actually were prophesizing this quite a while back. I would play bishop c5 for the reasons you've been talking about for many moves. Playing f4 leaves behind many weaknesses. And here the pawn f4 directly will be a target, but also all these dark squares in front of the king. So bishop c5 feels like a move that trades off one of white's, if not white's best piece. And She played a5 because you can't take it as the bishop is hanging, and she can refrain from playing bishop c5 for the time being because white is all sorts of tied down. But Alexandra, I'm kind of anticipating this f4 pawn falling at some point in the near future.
Yeah, you're saying that there's no way that bishop is going to be able to just stay there protecting it. That's a pretty fair point, and she's not rushing to put pressure because I think even if she doesn't take the pawn right away, she can make the pawn hang by distracting white with the queenside pawns.
And actually, b4, a takes b4. Now it becomes a big question: do you take with the bishop or the pawn? You can take with the bishop, trying to kick this queen off of the defense of the f4 pawn. She decides to keep her pawns together. I think that's the sensible decision there. This is so pleasant to play from the black side.
Yeah, I would love to play this from the black side. I mean, you have 2 minutes, you're up on the clock, you got a pass pawn incoming, a weakness on f4, your king is much safer than your opponent's. Okay, we gave black enough compliments here. What can white try to do to maximize her chances for saving this game?
Asking the right questions. And it's about coming up with a configuration that poses some threats while stopping black's ideas. So black, what's one of black's ideas? C3, thank you very much. Let me get a pass pawn and promote. So knight d2, now queen to c2, pins the knight, protects c4, hits b2 all at once. And actually that looks, it also threatens c3. What do I do now?
Oh man, you can't stop c3. The only you can't stop it with your bishop because then you lose your knight. The queen couldn't do anything either. So queen d5 at least is, I guess, not even attacking c4 though because the knight is pinned.
She's queen b. Wow, that was a sneaky tactic. Queen b3. If you take the queen, my knight avoids your attack, and your queen has to move off of the second rank. You have no squares that can keep it there. You can play queen b2, but then I'll trade on b2. So that was well done by Sara to survive this position. But if I'm Irina, I play queen to d3. I do not trade the queens, and this king on f2 is still not safe.
Right. So that was a very nice find, and at least she's managed to even out the time between her and Irina. But yeah, Irina doesn't have to trade the queen, as you said, queen d3, and then that pass pawn is 2 squares away from promoting, on top of the trouble with the white king here.
This is, and she's spending her time, I think wisely once again, because she can take on b3, she can put her queen on b2, she can put her queen on c1, she can put her queen on d3. So she has several options. I am a bit concerned about her bullet skills, which is why I probably wouldn't want to spend so much time. She does play queen d3, which is the best move.
Why are you concerned about her bullet skills? Irina specifically, or just it's hard to play bullet in general?
Both of those. Irina specifically because I don't think she has too much experience playing bullet, and she has shown herself to struggle a bit in time trouble. And as you know, and I know full well, playing bullet is just not easy. Look, she played queen back to c2. She's 14 seconds left. So what is she going to do after queen b3?
Right. I think she's repeating the moves just to get that 1 second increment here. Oh no, maybe she's coming up with a new plan. Okay. So the queen's trading off is going to make white's kingside and extended pawns less weak. She'll still have that passed pawn, but she's getting rid of one of white's weaknesses.
She has. And also, when we look at endgame, sometimes you can lose a pawn. Let's say white loses 2 pawns on the king side for the price of this 1b2 pawn. You can still make a draw even if you go down a pawn. So that's something that I would be remiss not to mention. And what do I do here? f5 comes to mind to try to force this bishop exchange. She takes this way, and knight to b1. So she just wants to bring her king over to win this pawn.
So if she does bring her king over, is there any risk that the king is going to be too far from the queenside pawns and she might end up losing that way?
Yeah, well, king c3 and then king d4. So the good news for Sara is her king quickly goes up to d5 and maybe into d6 and e7. Oh, she invited the king into the party. I don't know why she would do that. Like, white's king is better now.
Right. So it's going to be a draw, Robert, unless... I mean, Irina's 2 seconds on the clock. It's making me a little bit nervous because she could flag if something goes really wrong.
I think white's going to win g4 check.
No.
And then knight c3, and knight e4 check, or knight g3, same idea.
Robert, you're a prophecy. You said that arena struggles in bullet, and that's exactly what happened.
I mean, I feel bad because I just kind of, it's not even a jinx, right? I called it more than anything, but that, it's a shame. She played such a good game. She saw her laugh. She was like, I mean, come on, what?
Oh no.
I played such a good game there. I feel for her. It's happened to me plenty of times.
Oh no. Okay. Well, which game do you want to look at next, Robert?
Let's go to the game between Olga Giria and Humpy Kuneru, because that game is looking, well, I was gonna say spicy because I saw queen on h4, but it's not that spicy. So now I kind of regret coming here.
All right. So, okay, let's cover this position quickly regardless because we are here. So the pawn structure is almost symmetrical on both sides. White is going to be the one who gets to double the rooks on one of the open files first, but there are 2 open files, and black can also just challenge the c file right away. Yeah, honestly, it's not the most interesting position, Robert.
I was about to say, you sound so excited about this position.
I mean, I can't fake enthusiasm. You know, there's too much symmetry here.
They also only have like 15 seconds per side, and we're moved 23, and it looks like the most normal position. So it almost feels like they're playing bullet already. They're going to be even in this match throughout. So they're just sending us right to the bullet time control.
Yeah. And you know, even with time pressure, this isn't the hardest position to play for either side, unless one of them tries to push more than they should.
Yeah, I think that white is better because oh, never mind. I said the queen is more active, and then the queen's got traded. So I was like, oh, okay.
You sure know how to pick them, Robert.
I don't want to dismiss the chances in this game because even though there's end game, same amount of material, there's still going to be chances for both. And look at this king trying to get to d5. Here comes king d6. Now knight to e6. Watch out for knight f4. And you have to think, can I allow knight c5 check? Can I actually wait? Knight c5 could be dangerous. The black king is more advanced. I love endgame. Oh no, that's an outside h pawn. That's an outside h pawn. Here it comes. Distracting white's pieces. You're keeping white tied down. No, I think black's gonna win this game, Alexandra.
Yeah, I mean, black played much better. I mean, she does have the higher title, so she is the stronger classical player, but her endgame skills did just show at least white has been able to get a pass pawn of her own. So now it's a little bit more complicated, actually. She just got her chances back. She
did. And king to d5, there's potential for a zugzwang for both players. And knight e6, she'll play a5. She'll try to play a4 at some point. Whoa, knight g4 has to be played. e6, I guess, would have lost. Oh, this is getting confusing. What is happening here, Alexandra? I don't know.
I think they're just too low on time. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. It's going to be a draw. You don't have enough time to figure out anything sneaky, and you don't want to risk it and lose.
Knight c5. Yes, play on. Knight e7.
Oh, no.
Knight e7 check. And take on e5. It's winning. Take on e5, then h2, h1.
I was wrong. She figured it out with less than 5 seconds on the clock. Holy smokes. I'm so impressed with Humpy's play there.
Hey, remember the time we were like, oh, this is an interesting game, and then it's like one of the most fascinating end games we've ever seen?
I mean, that's why we like playing short time control chess, right?
That way we can just, here comes the a pawn joining the party. King can go to a3. Oh, the thing is, the white king is actually cut off because it's knight on a2. b2 wins. Oh,
yeah, b2 incoming.
No, king c2. It doesn't win anymore.
Knight b4 doesn't work.
Can I take on b4? Now I take on b2. Oh, she won a time. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
All right. All of my predictions were just off.
Okay, I'm pulling up that game because actually at this point, so clearly Olga expected something else, and she didn't expect knight c3, which threatens b1, but after knight takes b2, you then take this pawn on a4 next, and you make a draw. And the reason why a4 was bad, because if you went b2 right away, king c2, knight b4 check, after knight takes b4, you can take with the pawn on b4, and you get this queen first, and then take with the pawn on b4. I had to make a precise move order, and then I'm going to just push my pawn down and win the king and pawn game. It's very difficult for all this to happen in a bullet game, so I totally feel for the players. But it walked into a draw, and then she won because of the clock. Oh my gosh. Where are we going to now? Should we lead the way? Oh, captain, my captain.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking through the games. What about Tatev's game? We haven't looked there yet.
Okay, let's go to Tatev. And what is happening here? Tatev's pieces are congregating in the center of the board and on the king side. And Harika has these pawns on a5 and b5. So, Alexandra, first glance, whose attacking potential or whose control do you like more?
Well, white at first glance, I like more because she has her two rooks doubled on the open file. And of course, opposite side castling usually gives chances for both. But with her two double pawns on the c file and a3, I mean, I guess in a way it's a hook. If black ever plays b4, black will be able to also open up the position. And you know what? They just traded off their queens. So now no one is really going to get a kingside attack. White has the worst pawn structure on the king side, but she still has that open d file, so it's uneven now. It's uneven.
You know, I really like this decision by Tatev, and it was a very mature decision because a lot of players would be like, wait, these double isolated f pawns and this isolated h pawn, that's no good. But black is cramped and without real space, and if we trade bishops, in comes my rook to e6. I am the one attacking your base pawns more quickly. I have control over the board's only fully open file. And d4 was a nice try here by Harika to say, hold up, hey, d4 now, let me try to take, and once I take on e6, my rook takes on d4 and takes, I thought that white was just about to have a clear advantage. Look at Harika go.
I'm not predicting anything anymore, Robert. Okay, so this is an interesting game. Like you said, we're going to see some pawns being gobbled up. And I think, again, the significant thing here is that white has the worst pawn structure, and there's no more attack now to compensate for having opened up something like the G file in exchange for that.
And actually, with this rook on f4 hitting both f2 and h4, and the rook came to b8, it's a very smart move. I just want to go back one little move here. If instead of rook b8, she took on f2 or on h4, then white starts taking on b5, and then maybe a5. So she protects her pawn first. Just because you can capture a pawn doesn't mean you have to or necessarily should do it right away. She delays one move and then steals the pawn.
Okay, well now, again, I'm not making any predictions, but black does have that extra pass pawn, which is going to be extremely significant. The rook on g2 is also important because it's protecting g7, which is the base pawn. So black doesn't have to worry about ever losing it. And at the same time, the rook can keep the white king at bay, I was going to say, because she's controlling the second file. But instead, it looks like she wants to maybe take the h5 pawn after bringing the rook to protect g7.
Yeah, she can try to play rook g8 to protect g7, take on h5, but white is going to play c4. So we're going to have a very weird pawn race where it's going to be 3 kingside pawns for black against maybe 2 queenside pawns, c4 for sure. There it is. And my coach taught me growing up, he said 2 pawns are faster than 3. And I was like, what? Like 3 pawns are more than 2, that's better. But in certain endgames, especially with rooks on the board, like you spend more time trying to push all 3 of your pawns, where when you only have 2, you know you just got to rush them up very quickly. And actually look at this c pawn is already the
yeah, I was going to say, what about 1 pawn over 3? Because that c pawn is the only one that can go forward.
And
wait, does rook c8 threaten checkmate? Yeah, but the pawn on h5 is hanging. Ooh, okay. Do you think, how much does move order matter here? Like having pushed the c pawn before checking, I guess.
I think we're now making a draw because black, I don't think has anything better than just check back and forth. Yeah, just check, 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 because otherwise rook h8 check, and then white queen. So even though black has 4 extra pawns for the cost of a rook, that's going to be a good position for the side. Oh, whichever rook a2 mate. So you have to go king a3.
Okay, beautiful.
But she's 5 seconds. So that was really smart by Harika. That's how you play in your opponent's time trouble.
Yeah, you wait for them to be low, and that's when you do it.
So throw in this check again. Oh, she played rook to b1. Throw in a check on b2 with the 7th ranked rook. And then, okay, she's just going to make a draw. But it was a draw by objective measure. I like the attempt, though.
Yeah, absolutely. You should always try to trick your opponent. Worst thing that happens, 9 out of 10, they're going to see it. But that 1 out of 10, though,
Oh, I do know. I've had that happen to me way too many times to not know about it.
Oh no, I thought you were flashing back to when you beat your opponent, but no, it's always the traumatic memories that are the strongest, right?
Why'd you have to remind me?
I'm so sorry. All right.
Let's go to the Arena Crush game because that
Yeah.
was crazy.
Okay, so weren't we just no, we were on Tatev. Yeah, we were looking at Arena earlier. Okay, so we're back to Arena's game, and you said it looks crazy because look at that white king. She looks like it looks like PogChamps all over again. Where I'm just like, do they know how to castle yet?
And look at that pawn on c6 though. Like this pawn on c6 is very far advanced here for white. So if you can continue that pushing it up the board, you're going to be happy. But right now, I'm with you, Alexandra. How about the clock? Wait, 20 seconds for each player. This is just going to be a pure scramble.
Okay, so we're attacking g7. Whoa, did g5 work? Probably not because of knight h5. Okay. Anyway.
She brings the other knight to d5 this time. So queen e5 doesn't have the checkmate threat. And rook c8 played. If g5, as you said, knight h5 or knight e8, both possible. She plays knight e8. So
she does go for it. It's a tricky line. What's the best way for white to try to continue attacking here?
I have no idea. I don't. Knight f4 is played with queen d2 check. Isn't this like who's attacking better?
Run, Forrest, run! Get that king to safety.
Queen e1. Oh, she took on f1. That also looks fine.
She could have won a piece.
Okay, here comes knight f5 check. I think black's up on time, and c6 is falling. Knight f5 check is happening.
They both keep missing. I mean, okay, what am I talking about missing? Arena's not. Oh, she's gonna flag. She's gonna flag. You're right, Robert. Arena is struggling with the bullet portion. Yikes. She's getting 2-0'd by Sarah in their second match, and she already won the first one head to head. Yikes.
Yeah, and I see
Anna Muzychuk is in the chat. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna say. So you go ahead.
Anna Muzychuk said, "Robert with the new haircut?" ? Smiley face.
I mean, sometimes the hair just had to go. I look like a totally different person, but yeah, here I am. I'm still the same guy, so don't think I've changed just because my hair is different.
Yeah, and chat, huge shout out to Anna Muzychuk too. She's been streaming a lot, and if you guys haven't followed her after seeing her incredible chess, you should, especially for educational streams. She's extremely helpful, and she does a lot of co-streams with Elizabeth Pyatt, and their dynamic is hilarious. So chat, please check her out. Yeah, she's great, and congrats again to Anna for that comeback victory today. That was crazy into the bullet. And where should we stay on Sarah versus Irina? I'm happy to go wherever you want to take us. Chess.com unmodded and unVIP'd me. We're gonna have a serious discussion. Okay. Oh, well. Chess.com, come on, buddy. What's going on here? I mean, one time I spammed during PogChamps. One time. You guys banned me. Can we just move on? Well, some of us are trying to move on to the chess, but other of us are whining and be like, "Oh, I'm banned." Yeah, you're right. Okay, okay. I mean, my life, it's so hard. My chat privileges. You're the freshly shaven one. I thought you'd have more of the baby vibes, but I guess I'm the one in this commentary duo. So okay, we're back. Are we looking at Arena's game? Where do you want to go? Just going full boss baby on me here. This is hurts. I want to go somewhere else, and I don't know where it is, but it's probably away from commenting. Wait, what? Sorry, did that just? Those words almost come out of my mouth. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. Hey, Alexandra. Hey. You still there? Yep, I'm here. Okay, cool. So let's go to a game that we can both agree on. Let's go to the game between. How about back to Tatev's game? Okay. No, actually, let's go to Zansaya versus Daisy Court because we haven't checked in on that match. Good idea. Okay, so caught up here, we had a Scandinavian from Desi and opposite side castling with white having pusher pawn all the way to g4. So she created a hook that black might use to try and open up her kingside position later. The white knight on h4 doesn't have anywhere to go. It's a little bit awkward, but at the same time, white's queen and bishop pair are both pointing towards black kingside. So there's a lot of play for both sides here, but it feels a little awkward for white. It really does, because g5 would trap this knight on h4, but the knight on f6 is not protected. So you mentioned the knight on h4 and the pawn g4. That combination of pieces is looking quite vulnerable. And so I would try to play bishop e7, which threatens g5 winning the piece on h4. So after bishop e7, the white queen needs to move off f3, or the bishop needs to move off to g2. I don't think you want to fiend counter your knight. So probably queen to g3 is the move that should be played. And then we're getting a queenless position. I think that should favor black's chances as the
configuration on the long diagonal is a bit worrisome, especially after this move a4. Maybe there's knight b5 tactics, like just trying to sack a knight and then open up the diagonal.
Ooh, knight b5 is really sneaky, but does black ever have to take the knight? Or I guess either way, it's just going to bother the black queen.
Yeah, I'm trying to go knight a7 check. Just please get rid of this knight on c6. I'm doing all I can. What more can you ask from me?
Right, that knight on c6 is such a good defensive piece. If white could somehow trade it off, then I would definitely prefer white position just for the attacking chances. So other than queen g3, knight b5, are there any quiet moves that work here? Something like just bringing the rook to b1 and trying to push b4.
Feels too slow with g5, just trapping the knight right away. It is certainly something to look at because b4, b5 would be quite dangerous for black to see happen. And knight b5, she goes for it. I mean, she just wants to go for the tactic. Where does black go here? Queen d5, then the queen can move off of f3, and the queen on d5 will be under attack. So I'm not sure.
She just takes. Okay.
No, that can't be good. Take on c6?
Yeah. Okay. So she has 33 seconds. Whenever a player, I feel like they play a little bit inaccurately, I always check their time because it's a big reason why. So b takes c6, equal material now, but the black king is in a much dangerous position.
And queen takes f7 is also possible because there's gonna be some rook a. Oh my gosh, rook a8 check. Like so many options here for white c4 comes to mind. She takes on f7, and this king on c8 has to be too weak. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah, she did decide to take. I don't know. I always get a little bit worried that the queen is going to get trapped, but I guess it has h5 as an escape square. Not that it's enough. What about? No, never mind.
What are you gonna say?
I was thinking something like knight f3 with eventually getting the knight to e5 check. I'm just trying to think, how do you check the king? But you have to defend that square first, so I'm worried it's slow.
Yeah, but I think knight f3 was good. Knight g6 is a more forcing variation of what you were trying to accomplish. And that was really nice because now the queen is out and you don't have to worry about your knight anymore. And white's up a pawn and has safer king and has the two bishops and has the open a file for the rook and a menacing queen on g6. So
wow, can you maybe try to say something nice about black's position too, Robert?
Yeah, there's a nice bundle of pieces in the form of what do we say this formation is called? Like with like this little thing going on here?
I don't know. It looks like a little. It looks like a tool shed or something. That's just everything is jumbled up together.
It looks a little palatial almost. Like it could be a palace of sorts. I'm trying to wrap my head.
I guess that's more glamorous than the shed.
Yeah, I don't know why you're.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just because there's too many tools in the building. They're very close to each other, and you think they could maybe be in other locations, but it didn't really make any sense. So I'm just gonna go back to this game. Yeah. I really butchered that.
Actually,
okay.
Black's position doesn't feel nearly as bad as I thought it would be. Although the time, it's a clock moment here.
Right, 7 seconds to 58. You don't think it's as bad? I mean, white's also up a pawn now, so white could also just trade and get a better endgame because black has a terrible pawn structure. I
just think that like black has done a pretty decent job of.
Whoa, c6 hanging? Was that a blunder?
Probably. Queen
but
d5. Ooh.
Neither side takes it. Okay.
See, this endgame where opposite colored bishops, and especially now with the pawns of b4 and c5, in comes the bishop of c3 to try to steal the base pawn. Opposite colored bishop endgames always have chances to hold, and I probably wouldn't take on d5. I don't want to fix black's pawn structure, so I need to find a useful move here. Maybe d4 or d4 looks reasonable, just to offer the exchange on the e4 square rather than elsewhere.
Okay, so yeah, you had to trade off the queen. Might as well trade it off on your optimal square. Bishop takes so that she doesn't double up her pawns. And now she's trying to trade off. Interesting that the side with the pawn wants to trade into an opposite colored bishop endgame, and black is not interested. Rook
f4. You can't take on b4 because bishop takes c6 check. Yeah.
15 seconds. Oh, she missed it, Robert. Yikes. Okay, I think. Do you think this is going to be a draw? Yes or no? What's your gut?
I think black might win this game.
Wow. What a turn of events that would be.
I'm looking at this pawn chain on dark squares and waiting for e5, and then like things can go south very quickly. Black should never win this game. Objectively, white is still doing perfectly fine. Bishop takes e4. Okay. Yep. See?
You are a prophet, Robert.
Oh, time. She got it with 0.1 seconds left. With no time.
It keeps touching 0.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Well, you are a prophet, but I'm the anti-prophet. Every time I say something, the opposite happens. So I think we just, leveled each other out there. Jeez. So I thought we weren't going to see dirty flags today. And you know what? We are seeing some dirty flags today. I'll take it.
And I'm getting confirmation if this game counts because I thought the match clock may have been up. We'll see if they got it off just in time. We're going to switch games anyway. Let's go to the game between Sarah and Irina because that one is looking quite exciting with Black only have 12 seconds, but isn't there...
This has been the theme. Irina is always lower on the clock. In some of the games where we joined earlier, she was able to get a better position there, but then she really struggled. Here again, she was able to get a better position. She just won a pawn. B6 is hanging. Her king is safer than white's king. The pawn on e3 is really weak. But is that enough? Is she finally going to get that bullet finesse here?
I mean, Black's position is so overwhelmingly good that I feel like she has to get this game. And for the match situation, she can't afford not to. This queen on c5 threatens b6, threatens e3, threatens queen c2 check. And so that looks like a problem.
All right. So she won that second pawn. And I like that Sarah is trying to go for some kind of counterattack as well.
She has to, right? Out of desperation.
Right.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, the queen's coming in, but how do you make progress with Black? It's the annoying thing. Is it looks like all your moves are good, and then yet you're like, I'll have 2 pawns.
And that was my question. As white, should you try to just play solid and let Black prove that she's better? Or do you go for something like h5, g5?
She plays g5. She answers the question.
Well, and those were the 2 options, chat. There you go.
Oh, that's why Botez Gambit's successful.
Well, so the former would have been the better option, All right, there we go. Solid question still. Sell 5. All right. Sometimes when other people don't support you, you just gotta support yourself. Am I right, Chad? Am I right? Anybody? Okay. Well,
Irina gets the win, and I don't know what to say to you right now. We have 1 game remaining. It is Olga Giri with the white pieces against Humpy Canero. And once again, we see a symmetrical pawn structure, even number of pieces. Will we see Humpy win the endgame as she did on time when we last tuned in? Or will Olga, and this looks very level. There shouldn't really be losing chances here. However,
I'm getting deja vu, Robert. Didn't we come to one of their games before with that exact same analysis?
You pardon your French when you speak to me, okay? You don't hit me with that. No, we did see a position like that earlier, which is why I'd like to talk about games in terms of being level rather than saying it's a draw, because draw is a result-oriented thinking, whereas level is talking about the dynamics of the position. And here, bishop b4 should be played to protect this pawn a5. And importantly, this bishop on d5 is very nice, keeping the knight on d4 a bit restricted. So this knight is trying to come into c3, and once this knight gets to c3, I'm attacking a4. So I would prefer to have white in this position, black in this position ever so slightly. Although ultimately I recognize that it is most likely, even if it doesn't ultimately happen, that the pieces just get traded off. Bishop d3 to bring the bishop to c2 just to defend the a4 pawn feels about right.
Right. So so bishop d3, bishop c2. What about bishop b5? Is that a more active version of trying to defend the pawn? How do you decide on what side of the board you prefer your bishop to be on?
For some reason, I was worried about knight c3 and taking this bishop on b5, but I probably shouldn't have been. I'm just trying to keep the symmetry, which actually can be a bad mindset to have. Like, oh, the position should be equal. Let me just kind of do nothing. And then your opponent slowly builds up a better position. It's like if black has f6 and e5 and king f7, king e6, right? Then you're like, wait, why did I do nothing? Kind of just keeping the status quo help my opponent's pieces improve. So I think the bishop b5 was probably the easier position to play psychologically, even though bishop d1, bishop b5, they're probably similar moves in terms of strength.
Yeah, okay, that actually makes sense, and it's very unique grandmaster's perspective there. F6, do you think we're going to see something very similar with F3? Do you want to kick that knight out of E4?
Yes.
Now that your bishop can go to C2 and continue defending the A pawn.
The part of me thinks that she does play it, and it's good. Part of me thinks that it's sometimes hard to play a move like that because you invite knight C3, which looks like a better score anyway with a tempo. And here I think knight to B3, then knight takes A4, then knight takes A5. We just see these pawns get traded off. And, well, I think you know how that goes.
Yes, I think finally we'll go from you saying, this position is level, not drawn, well, actually, to, okay, this position is drawn. I'm just waiting for that moment, Robert.
If you were going to mock me, at least do so with a huskier voice and make me seem more imposing rather than just I don't even know what you're, kind of bookish and smug. Is what.
Okay, you're right. I'll try to make more suave impersonations of you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Here, should white play E4? She does. Does that make her bishop on C2 a worse piece? The answer is probably yes. But now the bishop came to B3 with check.
Now knight takes C3 is forced.
This is a really weird. Wait, bishop D4 check, and then bring the king in. Here goes bishop D4. Right now wins.
Damn it! You're gonna be right again, Robert. No, she missed it. She was gonna create a pass pawn.
Bishop D4. Just play bishop D4 and then bring the king in.
Ay, caramba. Wow. I think they must have the mindset that neither can win this. So maybe they're not even looking for wins anymore. Do you think that's possible?
There's also like 10 seconds left. So it's easy for me to see. Speaking of wins, this is losing for black. Just take on take on E6. You could take on E6, then brought your king into C4 and B5.
Wait, why can't you take the F6 pawn? What's the problem with
she checked the king first and then she's gonna take it.
Okay.
She didn't want to allow bishop C4, bishop F1. Hey, remember the time I said don't call games drawn and you were like, oh, well, no, we're gonna see a draw, and then we see a non-draw?
No, sorry, I don't recall that, Robert. Can we please focus on the game at hand because we have the next one? Great, thanks.
Well, no, the timer's up, so this game's about to be canceled, and you're also about to be canceled for mocking me in a bad way and saying, oh, like we're going to get a draw soon. And I'm like, hey, I've done a little bit of this commentary thing here, and just saying the game's going to be a draw tends not to always work out that way. So
you're very sassy today, Robert.
Today? Is this a new experience for you?
No, you're right. This is the usual Robert, chat. This is the usual Robert. No, okay, you're right. And that's why you're talking about how games that look even have these interesting dynamics. But I think they only have these interesting dynamics because of inaccuracy. And it's funny because it's only a game that's interesting because people make mistakes, especially in low time pressure. But
keep telling yourself that.
I concede, Robert. I concede. You're right. That was a good point.
But keep telling yourself that the game is only interesting when you make mistakes. It justifies some of your streams. But in the meantime, we will go to break.
That's why I'm one of the top chess streamers. Haha. Okay.
Oh, whoa. That was a not quite humble brag there. And
no, it was Joe. Okay.
No, we're gonna take a break before you embarrass yourself anymore.
Yeah,
when we return, I will be a nicer person to my very good friend Alexandra Botez. Everything we do here is for fun. We try to bring you education and entertainment, and I do actually enjoy her company. So on that note, we're going to take a break. We will be back with more FIDE-chess.com Women's Speed Chess Championship action when we return.
That's right, Robert. So if you keep saying things like that, my dad will. Hi, everybody. We're back.
Wow, the producers took us back earlier than I thought, and it's good that they came back with you threatening me instead of all the mean things I was saying to you. So
No, Robert will be fine, chat. But chess.com has a lot of commentators they've been meaning to put in. So if Robert doesn't show up tomorrow, it's just because they want to give everybody a chance.
well, if Papa B invites me to family Thanksgiving and not you, just let you know he did message me saying that he wishes I remember the family.
Honestly, he's a really big fan of you. He's a really big fan of you. I think my dad has once talked about you, and he said the perfect man. Like not in a wait, that sounded weird. Like
Yeah,
he had shit. He had
yeah.
oh sorry. He had oh god. Break. No, just kidding. Okay. So the games.
Yeah, the games have begun, and yeah, I don't know what just happened there. So,
I'm so sorry.
so I can't invite you anywhere. Speaking of needing new commentators, so this is the first day that Alexandra and I have commentated the WSCC together. Of course, we've done many other streams together. We are. I have nothing else to go. I can't believe you just did that. How dare you?
Yeah, it is a genuine compliment. It came out wrong.
I just put too much pressure on me. These words like perfect, it's just nobody's perfect.
Well, you are in Papa Botez's eyes. So, speaking of eyes, why don't we put those eyeballs on the chess game? Holy smokes, I'm on fire with the transitioning today. Okay, I'm looking at Corey's game, and a4 was just pushed, so that pawn almost looks like it could be free, but knight takes a4 doesn't work because bishop takes c4, b takes, and then the knight is hanging. I really like the way she's trying to create a weakness on white's queenside pawns right away.
And I also like that she hasn't released the tension too soon, because you can take on b3, that will allow white to take back on b3, and then there will be some exchanges. But if you take on a4 ever for white, rook takes a4, b takes, and the knight on c4 hangs, so you're losing material in that manner. So I really like the way that Zonsaya has exited the opening. I couldn't speak there for a second. I still have all this pressure from trying to say the perfect thing at all times. And by the way, have you noticed her virtual background?
Oh, you mean she didn't set up all of that stuff behind her camera?
She is so awesome with the virtual background. It's been slightly different, but it's always been chess themed.
No, I like it. It looks very professional. Maybe she's been streaming and that's why she has it set up that way.
Probably. You would know more about streaming than I would. I just talk about chess all day. You do that whole streaming thing.
Well, you talk about chess very well, so it makes sense that, you stay to it. So knight takes b6. Now, white has more space in the center so far here, and she's about to potentially grab an extra pawn. Does rook takes a4 work here? B takes and then queen takes b2.
So
no,
it didn't work because the queen would have been trapped on b2 after rook f to b1. Sorry, queen, no safe squares.
Got it. So that trap didn't work over there. And now she's just up a full pawn here. Do you think black has any compensation, or it was just a miscalculation?
Miscalculation. Remember how I said I really like how she's maintaining the tension? Unfortunately, sometimes you leave it for too long because you're like, I don't want to commit to a decision because my opponent can't capture. Then you make one exchange, and as soon as that knight was traded off from c4 to b6, like, wait, that a4 pawn actually is a goner. So Zonsaya is down a pawn. The good news for her is it's not the most important pawn for the time being. In endgames, it will be an absolute disaster. But for now, with some potential on the king side, this a7, a4 pawn, the a pawn is not the biggest deal in the world.
Right. But what about the awkward white kingside pawns? Is the king ever going to be in danger there?
I think we're seeing g5 on the agenda, and here it's played that if I take with the knight, in comes trying to queen h3 check. The bigger problem, though, is after h takes, knight takes, there's rook h1. She plays rook h1 first, which I don't like as much because g4 trying to undermine the defense of white's pawns. She should have taken on g5 first. That was actually a big mistake, in my opinion.
Right. So now she's playing rook f1, but it seems like black is getting some chances at attack now. I was trying to see, can black try to open up the position somehow? Because say there wasn't a pawn on d4, then something like queen d2 starts to look a lot more menacing.
Agreed. Trying to get black's pieces into the action here. So e5 or even c5 sometimes, sacrificing the pawn to get that queen in. I'm with you. And now look at this. The g4 square is black's for the taking. e5. She plays it. This looks
is bold. Do you think this was correct timing for a desperado? Was her position that bad that she needed to try this?
I just like it. You're getting so aggressive here, and white's king is the vulnerable one. And I think that with the open d file, you mentioned it first, that it gives black good chances. She doesn't open the d file. Said Corey plays knight to d3, but can't you just steal this d4 pawn?
Right. She's just going to get her pawn back here. And if she gets... Oh, she takes e4 instead. That's surprising because now white is just able to recapture.
I think she forgot about queen takes e4 is my guess. Because if you didn't take on e4 and took on e5, queen d2 check would have won this bishop on b2 at the end of things. But after queen takes e4, now all of a sudden white... Ooh, take that. But I guess rook d1 does rook takes a2. That's a problem. The open a file is good for black.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're always careful to take and allow any kinds of pins here, but you also have c5, so the bishop is always protected. Worst case, black is just going to lose a pawn here.
And I don't even think you're going to be able to take that pawn. But queen f3 was a good move, hitting the h5 pawn, and the only way that I see for black to defend is queen to d5. Oh, I guess queen g4 also suffices here. And we're going to get mass exchanges.
So there's queen takes f3 as an option, c takes d4. When you have these many combinations and little time, you still try to calculate through both of them, right? Or do you tend to play intuitively?
No, I think that was a good moment to spend 12 seconds. She is ahead on the clock. And the open A file is giving black all the compensation she needs. Black's pawn structure is much worse. You have no connected pawns. B5, D4, F7, H5, yikes. And rook D2 was a nice move to defend A2 and free up this rook from A1. So I would take on G4, I think, and I played rook F1. But she's not committing to the queen capture. And something that we've seen throughout this game is not committing to a trade too soon.
Right. Well, learning from you, we have equal material here, but I wouldn't say it's drawn. I would say it's level because both sides have their own unique plans here, and there's a lot of dynamic ideas. But do you have a preference for either side?
Yeah, definitely white now after rook f4.
Right, because now the pawn on g4 is weak. I think before the queens were traded off, it was a little bit harder to pick a side.
It was. Yeah, you asked me in an inopportune moment, and so it made it easy for me. Thank you for kind of giving me a layup, a softball. And now d4 is also falling, and then once d4 falls, down goes b5. White's about to be up 2 pawns in this endgame. It's going to be in a very important win for Daisy Corey, unless something goes really wrong. But up, rook d5 is the precise move, because if rook b4, there's rook a5, and instead she plays rook d6, and she's playing rook b6. Same idea, to try to win this pawn, and after rook a5, there's b4. She wins the pawn by force.
Right. And we got a resignation for that reason. Just too many pawns here. That was a tough game.
Yes, it was indeed. And now we have a 1-point match in this one. Let us shift over. We just spent the...
Oh, wow. I was just going to say the Humpy and Olga game looks really interesting. A beautiful checkmate just completed on the board.
You don't see that every day.
No, you don't. It was very, very cute. Wow.
Oh my gosh. What just happened?
I'm sad we missed those last moves.
Oh my, it's just like a forcing mating attack. Once the king went to g6, in came g4, and the king couldn't go to e6 as a rook e7 mate. So g4 played, protecting the knight, and after rook takes f2, maybe f5 check was better. Okay, that was an opportunity there for black, but this checkmate was very swift here. Rook g8, and knight takes, wow. That's really nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure chat didn't miss that. I'm looking through the games. Please let me know if there's one that you find most interesting.
Now, I'm interested in where you want to take us right now. It seems like all the games are relatively early.
What about the game with Sarah and Irina, because they're tied 2-2, and it's a very sharp game already. There's a lot of possible trades on the board.
Whoa. Good call on this game. What is happening here? It feels like white has the best possible position from a QGA that we've seen. What's his knight doing on G4 besides maybe being lost?
Yeah, that's the lost knight, for sure. Right there's no square where it can go back to other than H6, but that would be a problem because it would open up and double black's kingside pawns. But again, here there's a lot of different captures black has to consider. Bishop takes G5, taking the pawn on E5 with both knights. Are there any sack ideas on D5? I don't think so because knight just takes. But maybe if there would have been a rook recapture, then that bishop on B7 would finally have its time to shine.
Well, that's actually why after E5 played by white, you couldn't take on D5 because the knight takes D5, hitting the queen and the bishop. So, well, you could have taken there actually and sacrificed an exchange, but instead she played like this and played B4. And I imagine if the queen takes G4, then bishop F6, there's just like a mating attack against this king. It feels pretty vicious.
Right. Okay, so queen takes G4. Can you kick the queen out of there? Not really. Even a move like bishop C8, you just have queen G3 and bishop F6 is still incoming. So that queen is going to just keep the pressure on the black king side. Can you, if you just grab the knight, are you totally lost after bishop F6 is the, I guess, line we could look at.
Looks bad. I mean, take on C3, bishop F6 forces you to play G6 and the dark squares in front of your king. I don't know, but it seems like you're not going to last too long with that setup. But it is worth exploring because it isn't game over just yet. There will be chances for black to safeguard her king. I don't see any other moves. She takes here. Now knight takes G5. And I'm just trying to mate the king. Like knight G5, B takes C3. I'm looking at E6. Just, oh my gosh, this king's being blasted open over here.
Yeah, this is such a fun position to play with the white pieces. Although you have to be very precise, right? Because imagine you play something like queen takes G5, then all of a sudden E6 isn't as strong anymore. There's not as many threats. So whenever you have a nice attack like this, take your time, don't rush it. Otherwise, you might miss your chance.
Yeah, knight takes G5 is particularly nice because you're bringing another attacker into the game. As you just said, queen G5, you will play E6. It doesn't feel quite as powerful. Now after knight G5, white is up a piece temporarily. So if you don't take on C3, she does. But if she didn't, you're just down material. So instead she takes on C3, E6. And now how many pieces attack F7? That's 3 pieces. There are also ideas of the queen F5 or queen H5 going after the H7 pawn. Feels like in a even material game, it's just devastating and white's attack is crashing through. Yeah,
I'm loving Sarah's position here. Do you want to see it through or do you want to jump to another game?
Let's stay here for the moment. I'm just looking around to see if any other games are quite as advanced or exciting.
Sounds good. And Arena is now under 15 seconds on the clock. In a super tough position here. I mean, queen H5 looks terrifying also because it would...
Queen F5. You have to go G6 and queen F6 mate.
Oh yeah, queen F5. Okay.
She plays it. You should play B1 equals queen. I'm not even joking. It's the best chance.
Haha. Okay. Yeah, just slow it down. No. It was laughing at the sadness of the move.
You know, that was...
I know. I was pitying the promotion attempt.
That hurt my feelings. That was just ridiculous. There, you're like, like, just don't laugh at all. Don't give me that fake.
No, but it wasn't a fake laugh. It was a pity laugh.
Yeah, pity laugh for me.
No, for the move. It's like, is your position so bad that you finally get to promote only to be checkmated in the next 2 moves? Like, wow, that must have been a terrible game. That's why I was laughing.
Does it look like I believe you? Like
no, but you should. You should.
I trusted you.
I would never pity laugh you, please. I mean, the awkward silence would give me more satisfaction to see you suffer like that after some of the back and forth today. Okay, Robert?
No, it's not okay, Alexandra. All right, let's move on. Let's go to a different game. Can't handle you today.
Let me try to find a nice game to make up for it. Whoa. Okay. Can we go back to Olga and Humpy? Because I think we're actually, it's a cute tactic. She just won a piece. Black can't recapture because she's going to get back rank checkmated.
Ooh, nice. She took on e4 and rook d1. The queen is tied to the d8 square, and that's why Olga steals a piece and will cut the deficit in half from 2 games to 1.
And this is really important because if it would have been 4.5, 1.5, too big of a gap to come back from, or at least it feels like that. But with 2.5, 3.5, she has the feeling that she can catch up.
Definitely, and it's nice to, be getting victories against somebody as strong as Humpy Koneru. And after Queen C3, there's still the back lane checkmate, the B5, A7. White is up an entire piece here, and well, Humpy is going to lose this game. Okay, if she doesn't lose this game, I don't know what to tell anybody. You know me, I don't like to talk in terms of results. By the way, Tata Abrahamian won her game against Harika Jonavelli to cut that deficit in half as well. We're getting a lot of close matches today.
And that's what we like to see here.
Yeah, we do. So just don't allow h4 or h3 check, and she doesn't. Is there some stalemate that I should be watching out for? E3. Play E3. There's no stalemate, though. I'm just trying to make it happen.
Oh, rook takes A7. Black can't move.
Rook takes A7. Okay.
Oh, there you go. There's one. There's one.
So rook F5? Can I play rook A5?
Would knight E5 have worked? And if rook takes, you play knight G6?
Oh, that was sick. Yeah,
that would have been really cute. That would have been really cute.
Rook takes F4. There's rook takes H5 check. So that, like, you can only renegade.
She has 6 seconds, so she's probably a little nervous about stalemating. But now she has a checkmate in 1.
Rook F2 check, and then take on F4. Oh, she won on time. Wait a second.
Wait, what?
Oh, there's no. You can't. You can take on F2. Duh. I was getting so excited.
Okay.
And I was so wrong because rook F2, you go king F2, and the king can take on H3.
Okay.
Oh gosh, stalemate tricks are so awesome, and I'm so sad.
Oh yeah, no, they're super fun to watch. Maybe we should take a look at Tatev's game. We haven't seen one of hers from the beginning for a little bit now.
Okay, let's go there. Whoa, what is this?
Yeah, so
are we playing checkers?
Black has all of her pawns on white squares. So I'm feeling really bad for that bishop on C8. I mean, it's feeling pretty useless. But at the same time, Black doesn't have any serious weaknesses other than the fact she's behind in material. And now she's putting her knight on C4. Whoa! And now that B file is going to be a little bit opened up.
But that bishop on F4 is perfectly situated, stopping any kind of rook to B8.
True. And where's that bishop on C8 going to go now? Sorry. See, that was a pity laugh. I pity laugh for the bishop.
Yeah.
Right.
And bishop E5, trying to take over the dark squares. But that bishop on G7 didn't really feel like it had that great of potential. And the good news for Tatev is at any moment she can play pawn to B3 if she needs to shut off the B file from rook to B8. So it's not like rook B8 is going to immediately initiate a checkmating attack. And hey, Alexandra, quick question for you.
Oh gosh.
What's your least favorite piece on the board right now?
That's a great question because it's still the bishop on C8. It's still the bishop on C8. Which one do you not like?
I think I was highlighting it, giving the red light 1, 2, 3 there. And
oh, sorry, I wasn't watching. I was looking at the board.
It's okay. That's probably a better thing to do. I sensed a little bit of attitude in your tone there, saying, "Hey, Robert, remember the time you were supposed to be focusing on the board too?" And I'm like, yes, and I was doing that. Okay, I was multitasking. So back to the chess and me stopping talking to myself. Is white going to be able to play F5 and crash through, or is black playing A4 and crashing through first? It looks to me like black is the one with the attack here.
Yeah, black is the one with the attack, but black is going to need more of her pieces to join in. At least I guess the bishop can hop to A6 just to make space for the F8 rook if it's ever needed. A4 is a threat immediately though, because if knight takes, then you take back with the queen. White can't recapture. Whoa, I like rook B1 because it makes me feel like white is going to play king C1 and try to run to the other side.
If you could teleport over to H2, you'd be happy about this. I just don't know if you have enough time to run all the way there. Oh, and D4 is a threat. Oh my gosh, just as simple as that. After C takes B3,
oh wow,
D4 is a threat because your knight can't move to defend the queen.
Oh, so that was a blunder. Okay, I like the idea behind it, but the tactical timing did not work for that move. Yikes.
in very good awareness by Harika to say, all right, I wanted to leave the tension, and now I'm whoa, 92.
She's trying to make up for her mistake. But after I thought B takes A2 or C2 looked really intimidating. Probably B takes A2 so that the king has less space. But this makes sense as well. The knight on E2 is now pinned.
Yeah, this is really interesting game with respect to tension, right? You could have taken on C2 or A2. She doesn't. She let white take back on B3 and plays A4 herself. She's trying to open up this position. King C1, maybe white's king will escape. And black kind of needs to be on her game right now. She can't just allow this king to run all the way over to E1 and then F2, and she's winning material in the process. So I think this is actually just way too problematic. Like take on E4 even.
Yeah, take on E4. And I mean, like material count, she's only up by 1 pawn. But then you look at the position and, you know, the king safety is one of the most important factors to look at. But oh, never mind. 23 seconds to minute 18. So the side that's better off has more time. Okay, that doesn't help white's chances.
Yeah, it's not good. Taking on D5, Harika's trying to figure out how to take back. She can take with the knight. She does take with the knight. And what's going on here? So if we see too many trades, like knight takes E3, rook C3, take on E2, this endgame could actually be have a drawish tendency. She takes with a knight on C3 instead. But you don't want to trade too much material, I don't think, if you are Harika.
Right. But rook B3 doesn't win a piece. It's still protected twice, and there's no way to attack the knight a third time because we have a light squared bishop.
Do watch out for queen D8, queen F6, because there will be some sort of drawing mechanisms that you want to avoid, and it doesn't work just yet anyway. So she played king G7, which is very smart. Just wanted to note. Oh wait, she traded. No. This is not winning because white has locked down the king side with these 3 pawns. You can go rook C4 and just sit on the position.
Wow. So your prediction, the one thing that black could have done to not have chances was to simplify too much. And that's exactly what happened. I see that if the rooks are traded off, then black is going to be winning. So it seems like she's trying to bring her king into the endgame here. It's a good shot. It's a good shot. But why won't black be able to make progress?
So I actually had this similar position or the possibility to get into an endgame of this nature. And before, and I noted that the problem is white can sit this rook on H8, depending on, you know, if black ever tries to push this pawn down the board, and his pawn on F7 is such a weakness, and I can keep checking you. This is what you see in many different rook endgames. I'm not allowing this black king to start venturing over towards the king side to help the pawn. And with the king so nicely positioned on F3, and this is a draw by repetition already, just progress could not be made. That was an imprecise decision to trade off all the pieces on E2.
Yeah, it certainly was. So that's a good result for Tatev. We thought she was going to lose, and she's already behind. So 2.5, 3.5. Do you want to continue here, or shall we switch to a different game?
Let's go to the Zansaya versus Daisy Corey game, because I saw a knight on C6 and a bunch of hanging pieces. And wait,
this is very similar, right? Because we had a Scandinavian opposite side castling, putting pressure on the C6 knight before. Desi got into a terrible position and then ended up winning. Wasn't
Daisy down 2.5 to half, and now was leading 3.5, 2.5?
Wow, what a comeback.
I'm not mistaking that, right? That was as what's been happening in this match. Let me check.
Yeah.
She's won 3 straight games, confirmed.
And this is a really complicated position for black because she can either take the knight on C6 or the knight on C3. Or the bishop on F4, which looks like the worst option. But whenever there's a lot of trades to calculate, you always take a little bit more time.
Yeah, I think she is in a tough spot here, trying to figure out which of these knights to take. I think taking on C6 is just too risky with your king being blown open like it will. And actually, you might even lose a piece there. So she takes on F4. If you take on C6, there was knight D5. And if you take with a C pawn, there's rook C1, winning C7, crushing. If you take with E pawn, there was queen E5, threatening your bishop, threatening checkmate. That was also crushing. So instead, she plays knight takes F4 here. And So which of the many moves now does white make, Alexandra? It seems like too many good options.
Right. So G takes f4 is one option. Trying to move the knight from c6, maybe knight a7 to, yeah, okay, knight a7 looks really good because you're checking the king. Now you can recapture the knight. Black's king is once again in the center of the board.
And white's up a piece to boot.
Yeah, just up a piece for two pawns. Sorry, one pawn now because white is recapturing them. Bishop c6 looks really menacing in the future. If white could somehow open up the e file, then it would even be checkmate.
This is not what Desikori wanted when she played the Scandinavian, and I think she actually she might want to switch away from it. I don't really like to kind of bishop c6 knight d5 check and rook takes b8 checkmate.
Oh, that's gorgeous. I hope she plays it out just for the audience.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is I don't really like to coach while commentating. It's not really my place. Everyone has a different style. But the thing is, in this match, it's felt like Desi has had struggles on the black side of the Scandinavian game after game, and it feels like Zonsaya, to her credit, knows how to handle it. So I probably would stop trying to play the Scandinavian in the bullet portion.
Yeah. I think when you're really struggling in rapid time control against the same opponent, you got to try to mix it up. Test your opponent somewhere else.
I'm with that. And Sarah, I think she just won again, is moving up to 5-2 lead, if I'm not mistaken. That is really a lopsided matchup for now. However, I noted that in their previous matchup, Irina Krush won 3 games in the bullet to tie the match, which Sarah ended up winning. But a comeback is certainly possible despite a big deficit. So where should we go? I'm happy to go to whichever game you feel like taking us to.
All right. I'm just taking a look in between the games here. Let's see. Maybe we go back to Tatev's game. Because again, that one looks like it has the most tactical chances. So the queen was just offered on... Wait, does rook takes d5 work?
Oh my gosh. I just opened the board. Rook takes d5 was brilliant because now your queen is left undefended, which means you have to take the queen and then I take back and I'm just up a piece. Uh-oh.
Did she... And it looks like she just missed it.
It's an easy thing to... It's not really overlooking it, right? If... Oh, wait. What happened anyway? She just one piece... Huh? I think this is a game that everybody wants to forget.
Yeah, there were... Tatev had a bad game here. That was quite a few... Unless it was forced. Sorry, it went by so quickly.
It definitely wasn't forced.
It definitely wasn't forced, right?
Yeah, I think both of our kind of little suspicion of this seems to be going wrong. I'm going to bring up that position very quickly. Yep. After bishop a3, Tatev should have played either taking on d1 first, so that when the knight is captured on e7, it's not attacking the rook. But as you saw in the game, rook d8 was played, and now after bishop e7, the bishop on g2 is lost because rook e8, king takes g2. You cannot take this bishop on e7 without the ice skater happening, a backline checkmate with rook to c8. Did I sum that up
honestly,
well?
Yeah, that's just such a tough game because Tatev finally came back and she was able to draw the one before. So it felt like this was now her momentum to try and equalize the match, right? So a little tough to see, and it's a little bit tilting as well to lose like that.
It is for sure, especially because the way that Harika has been playing is kind of like the Pirts or the modern, these like setups you don't see too regularly in classical chess. You're like, I should be getting a good position from the white side of things. But as we saw in that last game, Harika ended up making a draw, but she was the one just dominating that game from start to finish. And she liquidated an unfortunate time from a great position. So here, f4 played by Tatev, gaining space in the center. But as you've noted several times today, Alexandra, are you worried about this f4, e4 configuration being overextended?
And that's always the risk, right? It's nice right now because you have more space, but if you're not able to get to trade that into some kind of advantage, usually you get a really nice attack. It's very dynamic, and you get into the deeper into the middle game or the end game, then it is going to be a weakness. So it really depends on the timing and if she's able to make use of it in the next 5 moves or so.
And knight c5 just played by Harika, maybe trying to go to e6, trade off his nice knight on d4. White's pieces are coordinated quite well. You haven't finished developing your queen side. And with the knight on c5, one of my first moves that candidates is b4, although I'm risky, just like f4 is opening up the king side to a point of no return. So in some situations, perhaps b4 is a little bit too much and she plays it. I'm looking at this bishop on g7, and that bishop gives me life on the longest diagonal.
Okay, well, Tatev certainly is the one who has stolen all of the space here. And at what point do you want to push any of your pawns any further as white here? Is there any direct threat, something like f5 or e5?
Maybe b5 as well, to try to secure the d5 square. And if you play b5, this is very common. If c5, you can take on f6, bring your knight into d5. She says, oh, I'm going to listen to Alexandra. I'm going to play e5 right. Ooh, if you take this bishop e5, you lose the exchange, don't you?
Right. So she waited to push it when she was able to combine it with some kind of tactic here. I actually really like your idea of b5, because now that the knight moved away from f6, it's no longer defending the d5 square, which the knight would love to hop into.
Yeah, b5 looks good. E takes d6 would be very bad, because e takes d6 is rook e1 check. Queen takes e1, bishop takes d4. Thank you for the hanging piece. The queen is overloaded on the d1 square. So it's actually helpful that it doesn't work out, because I don't think e takes d6 would be good even if like you weren't hanging a piece. It just feels like it liquidates too soon, whereas b5, as we've been talking about there, it's played. You're trying to get your knight to d5. And after taking on e5, it's pinned to the rook on e8. So actually can't Tatev just, yeah, she takes on c6. And oh boy, here comes knight to d5 or knight to b5, depending on what black does.
Right. Wow. This is a really, really fun position. Okay, so after queen d8, the rook on e8 will be defended. And how does white continue? It's a great position, but what's the plan from here?
Probably steal your knight on d7.
Just take the knight? I knew that. Haha.
You made me laugh. Congratulations.
There you go. That's all I was trying to do, Robert. I don't know why I didn't even think of that knight for a second. Okay, cool. So knight b5 played. I do see that the queen is under attack, though. That's a good thing, right, Robert?
That's the first. What?
Wow. That's a first. Well, you're right, because I'd pull off so many wins without a queen that I just try to make it fair for everybody. Okay.
Okay, I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, Canadians have such a lovely accent. Okay, queen c5. So then, is black getting some counterplay here?
It does feel like it. Somehow this queen's kind of out of the box that it was in. I still feel like white should just be heavily favored thanks to this pawn on c6. She plays queen to d4. And if the rook takes e5, she just takes back. And the rook... Wait a second. The f takes e5 is forced. Oh, and then if a queen takes b5, you have c7. The rook is trapped on b8.
Okay, that one almost got a giggle out of you as well. So I guess just bishop takes b7 and... Queen d6. Okay,
no,
so...
queen e2. It's gonna be a checkmate for black.
Oh my gosh, there's no way to defend g2.
No, there's not. This bishop is too strong on
God,
b7.
not again, Tatev, not again.
Just shaking her head. Oh my gosh, and what a position she had. What a game she was playing. And that's
queen d6 is such an intuitive move too. It's so easy to overlook.
And that's that's the tragedy of chess, is that one move can ruin your entire position. Wait, we have a game with 10 seconds left. We're in a bullet scramble.
Okay, let's go there. Let's go there.
Daisy Corey and Zansaya Abdulmalik. Looks like that.
3.5.
I mean, this pawn is too strong, isn't it? Knight d6. It has 98 check, maybe. Yep. To win f6. And white's up a couple pawns, too.
White is up 2 pawns. And...
Oh, she pre-moved rook c8. She lost her knight.
She might still win, though, right? After...
Knight takes c6?
c7?
Oh, now, well...
Yeah, okay.
Winning king pawn.
Yeah, okay. So up an extra pawn, enough to win with just kings. Okay, maybe it wasn't still winning. You're right, after knight c6.
No, it probably was. It just, you don't want to give away a knight for free, obviously. And she pre-moved. She gets away with it, but sometimes you pre-move and you don't have any recourse there. So, oh my gosh, the king's getting to c8. We're making a draw. Ay, vey.
That is rough. And I mean, this is an end game. Both of them know like the back of their hands. She was just moving too quickly. Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh, that is a half point that you certainly regret not gaining for yourself here, because it's an even match as we head into the bullet. I'm going to pull up, this game is about to be canceled. Obviously, is not going to count. I just want to pull up that very quickly, because first there was the pre-move of the king to F. Where was it? Way back somewhere. Here, C5. She just pre-moved rook C8. She had no time on her clock, so I get why she did it. But King G7 was so smart attacking the piece.
And King G7 seemed like one of the most natural moves there. Maybe she was expecting knight E6.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, like some kind of attack. She didn't have much time. And even at this point, she's still winning. And she, of course, knows that. And what happened was she went King D5, and she should have gone King E5, King F6, I guess, if she's going for this maneuver. But even that is kind of slow at this point. Or go all the way and steal the A5 pawn and rush your pawn. That's probably the easiest way to win. King C5, King B5, take, and then rush your A pawn. Instead, she moves up here, and she's still winning if King C6 and goes after the A pawn, but that's really hard to do. Actually, I think that psychologically, you're so focused on winning with a 2-on-1 on the king side, just sacrificing one pawn for the other, that going for the queen side pawns is just totally out the window.
Yeah, I think that's very fair analysis there.
And then this was just a draw. Wow, what a missed opportunity. All right, I need to calm down. I need to take a breather here because we have 10 minutes of bullet ahead. Alexandra, before we take a break, any quick predictions of what you think might happen?
I think Sarah is going to beat Irina in the bullet portion based on what we've seen so far. Humpy has been playing a little bit better from what I've seen. Desi and Jansaya could be honestly anybody's game. And Harika seems to have a bit of a lead over Tatev so far.
Okay, way to make no predictions. We will be back in a few minutes. For
I just predicted all four.
Women's Speed Chess Championship action. We will be back shortly. And what everybody missed about 7 seconds ago at this point was Alexandra saying, sorry. I don't know if it was meant in my direction, but I heard it said. Our producer also heard it, so he can verify later. Alexandra, what was that about?
I have no recollection of this happening.
You're just singing
I was just trying to
Justin
recover
Bieber.
because I think I correctly predicted everything that's going to happen in the bullet portion. You weren't happy. Chat wasn't happy. It's just been a tough day in the office, you know?
You know why they weren't happy? Because you literally predicted nothing. You just read the scores and said, oh, well, Sarah's going to win because she's up 6-2.
Fine. We're going to have Corey, Humpy, Sarah, and Harika. Yes, most of them are the favorites. But it's fair based on what's happened so far.
Yeah, really, way to go out on a limb there. Also, I think those are good choices. I'm going to go with Zone Side just to argue with you. And wow, we have a French. So no wonder you're rooting for Corey.
There you go, Corey. Let's see. I think Corey's also close to my age. She's 27 because I remember knowing about her when I was playing competitively.
She switched from the Scandinavian to the French. So she decided to make her Let's Go Bishop worse, but make her king safer because we just saw her kind of get obliterated in several of those games. Ooh, F5 played. What do you make of this French, Alexandra?
This F5 move is something I also play in similar positions in the Tarash when I'm panicked that white is going to get some crazy sacrifices on H7 otherwise. I struggle with it usually when white takes on passant, but if white doesn't take, it can often be solid.
I'm not going to look at E6 where that French pawn is. My eyes shield me.
Yeah, but at least we traded off our light square bishop, right? But G4 looks terrifying. That's the thing. The Tarash is a super tricky opening to play against as black. For me, it's the trickiest line to play against in the French defense. Because if you play it closed like Corey did, your opponent always gets these crazy king side attacks and you have more space on the queen side, but having more space on the queen side never feels as good when you're like, shit, am I going to get checkmated in 10 moves? I meant shoot.
Yeah, I heard shoot, don't worry. And actually, B5 was played by Corey because she needed her rook to protect her E6 pawn. It was a very good decision. In fact, I think Abdulmalik had B4 to kick the knight from C5 earlier. It was a missed opportunity. And now look at this knight on E4. That is a glorious piece that you cannot kick out because you have a dark square bishop. People have asked, oh, like you say, bishops are better than knights. When are knights better than bishops? Hey, when my knight's in E4 and you can't kick that piece out, that's pretty good. But here comes G takes F5 and then E6. Push that pawn through, and white's double rooks in the G file. That is going to be GG, yo.
This is I'm having flashbacks to playing the Tarash is one of the variations that made me not want to play the French anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
E6.
Corey is really struggling with her black openings.
She is. And how to finish this game though? Because if you don't find a knockout blow, actually, queen A3. And if a queen A3, the only move is king G7, you get F8 equals queen, I think.
F8 equals queen, and then if the queen takes...
check. Queen A7, the geometry is beautiful.
And there goes that rook. Yikes.
I'm not rooting for either player, but beautiful tactics are beautiful tactics. And that one was wonderful.
That's fair. That's fair, Robert. It was a very nice finish. I think we should go quickly to Tatev and Harika's game just because it's a bishop and a knight versus a rook and a pawn.
We have Slicker in the chat. You want to say anything to him or spit
a bar? Slicker! You want me to spit a bar from you? I will because you came very far in your progress in PogChamps. That's right. That's the only rhyme I got. At least I'm here giving it a shot. Shout out to Slicker. He's the man. If you don't believe that, you're not a real fan. Woo!
Whoa, his name is Slicker. He came for the quicker time controls because he wants his brain to be a little thicker after he takes in some of our knowledge. Let's go through this game here. And as you see, the knight came to D6, going after F7. Now the E6 pawn is also under attack. And, well, there's also knight E8 stuff happening.
Okay, you one-up me with that rhyme, and then you went back to chess commentary. But that's okay. Let's go before they run out on time.
Okay, well, let's go to a different game because this match is also kind of lopsided at this point.
Okay. Well, sure.
Where do we go?
I don't know. I thought this endgame was still interesting, honestly. I mean, white's gonna win. Yeah, I guess.
Oh, king takes D6.
Why do they do that every time I say it? Why is the piece blunder? It was gonna be a win for white. I'm not losing my mind, right, Robert? It was winning.
It was, but now it's not because that was a free piece. And I was trying to get away from this match because it's been getting away from Tatev. But now she wins the piece and she should win this game. And she's going to be down only 2 points and seizing the momentum. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
2-point match with just under 6 minutes remaining. She has chances now. So
Man.
where do we go? Take us to an even match.
An even match. Okay, what about, no, we just looked at Corey. Let's look at Humpy and Olga. They're very close. 5.5, 4.5. Let's see what's happening here.
And of course, you picked the game with like the absolute driest opening. That's not your fault.
Well, Robert, let me remind you that games are never dry. They're just level. Okay.
Wait, dry is a word that I can use if I feel like it. So. Okay, they're repeating moves. You see that? They just made a draw by repetition because Humpy's like, oh, I'm just not going to lose to you. I'm up a point. So let's just.
The one time I talk about a game being level, they draw in the next 3 moves.
See, it just
I can't deal with this today. This is actually absurd.
It just shows how much you understand me, and by understanding me, you don't. So let's go to a different game here because we should look at the Abdulmalik versus Corey matchup, and we have another French. So how are you feeling? Oh, it's 2-game lead for Sansaya now.
Wow. Well, Corey's gonna have to come back after that one.
And
it's tough.
What's going on here? Is there some bishop b3? Watch out for taking on h7, right? There's these lines are pretty crazy. Like take on h7, knight g5, queen d3, pawn h5. You just blast through on the king side with a mating attack.
I mean, at least in this game, White also opposite side castled. So at least in this kind of French, she has more chances than before when she kind of just got steamrolled.
True.
I don't know. E takes f6 is not a good line. This usually isn't a good idea.
E5, I think for black, just you kind of have to go for it. I don't know. It feels very vulnerable. You're right. As soon as
I think she shouldn't have gone for it, and she should have just continued her queenside attack, something like a5.
Here come the pawns.
Yeah.
f6. Keep it going. Just sacrifice. When you are going for a mating attack, it's not about the pawn quantity, it's of the piece quality. And f6 just continues to rip open black's king. She takes on e6 instead. What do I know? Nothing.
Well, now it seems like black has a bit more of a chance because f6 looked really intimidating. Okay. I mean, rook f1, very, very solid move there. Although, why is she trading off when she's attacking? Shouldn't she be trying to keep her rooks on the board?
Yeah, she's just trying to take, I guess, this open file. King h8. What a move to play here. g6 coming.
Okay, both have around 30 seconds, so that's why we're seeing some moves that they feel off for a reason. King h8 felt like it wasn't accurate, but at least it was quick. G6 looks super intimidating. I love the move G6, just really exploding that king side open. But I guess she's doing it here as well.
Rook h1 and stuff. And G6, your idea is, but G6 maybe went by h5 or something. This is a weird position. And queen f7.
Okay,
so rook f1 play.
So the key in this position is that black's king is the most vulnerable, and white has to win. Otherwise, if the queens get traded off and it's an endgame, the bishop pair is better. That's
true, and that's what day score needs. She's now 2 games in this match. I think we are. I just saw a situation with Olga and Humpy. They're still going in that game. That's a 1-point affair, and the other matches are spreading a little bit. Tatev Abrahamian looks like she's going to just draw her game against Harika, which is she can't afford that. She needs to win. So I'm just like trying to look across the board here.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you make
Wait,
of this
are you sure
game?
she's gonna? Oh, sorry, I was looking at the Olga game. Which one?
Let's go to the Olga game. Let's do that. We have to go there.
Yeah, because Olga 5-6, and she's up a pawn here, and they both have under 10 seconds.
Rook c4. What? Oh, that was mate. I got so nervous. Sorry.
Okay, you scared me too. That's all right. Wait, is the pawn on d6 not hanging? No, it isn't. It is, but a7 is more important, and she's gonna get the pigs on the blanket. I think that's what it's called. When you have rooks on the 7th, no?
The pigs on the blanket?
That's how I taught it to kids. I don't know. No wonder they were so confused all the time. Okay, let's keep going. So can white actually win this, or does black have drawing chances?
What the heck is the pigs on the blanket? Okay, well, now black does not have drawing chances because the A pawn is free, so is the B pawn. Oh, rook d2. You see that? That is a bullet
She
move.
tried to pre-move it. I respect it. Oh, okay. I think it's actually called Pigs on the 7th, and I confused it for a snack and called it Pigs in a Blanket.
Yeah, pigs in a blanket is a like carnival food, and
I think I'm just hungry, Robert.
yeah, I'm hungry for knowledge and not. I don't even know what you just said. I'm so upset right now. Somebody get me a new co-commentator. Where's
That if
Slicker?
I'm
Is
not
Slicker
back
back?
tomorrow, you'll know what
Is
happened.
Slicker still in the chat? Slicker, come over here.
No,
Come on, buddy.
Pigs on the 7th is a thing.
I dropped bars for Slicker.
You did, and he left. He asked you to do something. He wasn't impressed with either of us, and he's like, "Peace out, yo."
Oh my gosh, what did you just do? You ruined the whole stream, honestly.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make your job a little bit harder. Make sure you're on your toes, you know. Anyway, so which game did you want to look at?
The only one that matters at this point, Humpy Cornera versus Olga Gira. They are tied in this one. We should focus on this game here and look at the position. It's one where Black just played bishop to a3, offering an exchange of pieces. The queen comes into a3. The a2 pawn can't really be captured that easily. The knight will come to f3, which protects the pawn a2. And it feels like, well, actually, knight there may be d takes c4, which is why she went knight to b1. Alexandra, what do you make of this match situation? Who do you think is going to take it? Are we going to go to tiebreakers?
And this is the last game. Okay, I have a slight preference for White's position just because it looks like she's going to get a pass pawn here. The time situation is very close. Just a slight preference though. What about you?
I think that White's position is, whoa, okay, well, taking on c5 with the pawn was interesting. I thought she was going to take with the rook. Instead, she just wants to push her pawns forward, although Black is doing very much the same. And queen to e5, knight to g4 type of ideas are what I'm looking at. I don't think you have time. b5.
But yeah,
push
b5
those
so
pawns
quick.
through. Keep them going. And bishop g4. So then there's f3. The pawn f e4 is pinned to the queen. So you can play c6 right now.
Yeah, c6 with tempo. And now we have to stop pushing it, but at least you have f3. So she did calculate that first.
It went from bad to really, really bad.
Right. And I think it's because she took with the pawn. She probably wouldn't have done that in a blitz game or classical, but dealing with a pass pawn is so much harder in bullet. So I think it was a good practical plan.
I agree. And the game's still not over because the c7 pawn, oh my gosh, g4, that's a move that scares me in a bullet game. She's going to take on e4. Imagine rook takes c7. I actually think that Black has serious chances here. f4.
Wow, she gobbled that faster than I would gobble up pigs in a blanket right now.
No. We're done with the pigs in the blanket.
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay,
cool.
Just making sure you know.
Noted. Okay, so up in exchange here. Oh, Olga might flag.
Yeah, she's spending too much time. Her position is bad. Everybody knows it, including herself. She shouldn't have spent so much time there. You just have to move. And it's painful to be losing objectively, but bullet often isn't about the objective situation. So queen c1, rook to d1, queen f4. Play that really quickly. Go for the g4 pawn. That's scary.
Yeah, scary moves. 8 seconds. Oh no, don't flag.
Rook f1. Safeguard your king. Protected. There we go. Good move. And now knight d1. There it is. Knight d5 for Black.
Yeah, she flagged. It was too tough.
It was indeed. Humpy Cornera moves on, as do Zansai Abdulmalik.
Oh, let's go to the last game because there's still one more.
Oh wait, but the match I guess is.
But it's 7-4. Yeah, the match is over, but we might as well see them finish through, right?
Yes, you're right. You are absolutely correct.
I haven't heard that a lot today, but okay.
She hung the knight on d6. Queen d1 took the bishop on d4.
Oh man, did Corey just lose 4 in a row? She just got killed in the bullet portion. And
she was the one who was winning the final 3+1 game. Remember that. She ended up, unfortunately for her, blundering that king and pawn in game away after was winning before that. So we're going to ask Zansai. We'll have her actually for the interview. Mm-hmm. So we will be able to ask her thoughts about the match and how she was able to just dominate in the bullet. And right now she's about to take her 4th straight bullet game.
That is super impressive. I'm just gonna take a peek at her bullet rating, unless it might be 2476. I'm guessing that's it. Never mind. They probably updated it.
She dropped her bishop as soon as I said that. So I was the one who commentator's cursed this time.
True, and I mean objectively, Black should still win this, both on the clock and the board. Oh man, this is the second time we've seen Corey flag.
Yeah, so Black. shouldn't have won, and then Black did win, and this game is going to be canceled. So that means we are going to go to our last break of the day, and when we return, we will have Zansaya Abdumalik, if I'm not mistaken, for an interview. You will want to hear her thoughts on what was a great performance in the opening round of this final Grand Prix leg of the FIDE Chess.com Women's Features Championship. Be back shortly. And we return with an interview with Zansaya Abdumalik, who just defeated Daisy Corey. First and foremost, congratulations on what must have been a pretty nerve-wracking bullet section.
Thank you. Yeah, tough match.
And we need to ask, because in the final game of the 3-minute time control, you were losing that game, and then you somehow managed to make a draw. Did you feel like that gave you the momentum heading into the quickest time control?
You mean this crazy game with the pawn on d7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I don't know how I managed to to make a draw. I mean, I just made the moves. I played so quickly. I don't know. I just tried to make some problems and turn it good for me. Yeah.
It seemed like you were continually getting in very strong positions every time Corey played a Scandinavian. Is this an opening you prepared against, or do you think it just suits your playing style?
No, actually, when we played the first match, I saw like she likes to play some dangerous positions, like some attacking and tactical things. So I thought like in the first game, I mean, you saw it like I played with the pawn on d3, right, which is
Yeah.
not really active. So I thought that okay, I'll play some calm positions and then I'll see what she's gonna do. So I think yeah, that was good idea against her style.
And speaking of active, have you been boxing lately? I remember in a previous interview you told everybody that you're an avid boxer.
Yeah, I had a lesson today.
So you had a boxing lesson, and then you just played a very intense chess match. So I think that, Alexandra, we need to do more with our lives.
Yeah, I think so as well. Jensaya, do you feel like exercising before the game helps you play better?
No, actually, it wasn't right before the game. It was a morning lesson, so I had like 6 hours of break before the game. Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, you just feel like relaxed and having fun. I think that's better.
Pretty good mentality to have. And well, it was a really just hectic match for you two because you started off really hot. Right? You had a lead at the beginning, and then Desi won 3 straight games. Did you lose some of your confidence, or did you feel the whole way that you had a good shot to win the match?
No, actually, I felt fine. I mean, I was like, okay, just let's play it, right? Okay, I wanted to win, of course, but I didn't really feel anything. I mean, when I lost, it was like, okay, then we have a lot of games like, later, so I was
Well,
fine, really.
I was really impressed with your chess, and you're already a former girls 20 and under world champion in 2017. You're an international master. What are your plans for the future? Are you going for GM?
Yeah, actually, I have 3 GM norms, so I just need a rating.
So soon enough, you will well, we don't know how soon because of the pandemic, obviously, but hopefully in the relatively near future, you'll be able to play more tournaments and get the title that you have the elect on it, but we'll remove the elect and just be able to call you Grandmaster. And, are you excited to play more speed chess tomorrow? Or are you kind of burnt out? It is a long tournament.
Yeah, actually, yeah, but who I'm playing with? Can you tell me? Because I
That's a
didn't check that.
fantastic question. I don't know. Who do you want to play tomorrow? Oh, I see it now. You are playing against Yifan.
Ooh.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, that's great, right?
Yeah, so how are you going to prepare against your game versus Ho Yifan, the highest rated player in the entire event?
No, I think there is no chance to prepare. So I guess I'll just go to the boxing lesson and then I'll come and enjoy my chess. That's it.
That's fair. I imagine it's going to be a learning experience either way.
Yeah, very excited. Good pairing.
Yep. Well, we'll let you go. I know it's late by you, but you're always ready to come for a fight. Yes, that's a boxing pun. Yes, I regret saying it out loud. So in the meantime, since I enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll see you tomorrow for more chess.
Yeah, thank you.
And there you heard from her. She goes on to face Ho Yifan in the quarterfinals of the 4th Grand Prix. Alexandra, you know what I'm going to make you do. You're looking across the bracket here. Make some predictions for us, will you?
Well, I think Jensaya just predicted her match with Ho Yifan for us. I mean, Ho Yifan is a complete beast. She's definitely an underdog going in there. We're also going to have Humpy Conero versus Valentina Gunina. And Valentina Gunina, to me, she's the more experienced player. So I think she's certainly going to be the favorite going into that match. But of course, Humpy had very impressive results today. She was able to play both positionally and tactically at the same time. She had a nice victory today. Anna Muzychuk versus Sarah. I think that's going to be a very close match. And then Alexandra Kosteniuk versus Harika. I think Kosteniuk is still the favorite. Again, she's a heavyweight there. She's more experienced, but Harika certainly up and coming there.
Well, I'm glad that you actually gave predictions this time, and it just reminded everybody that we will be back tomorrow for the quarterfinals. That is July 16th, 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. You will not want to miss more of this action. For now, we are going to sign off. And Alexandra, I want to thank you for joining me for the commentary. You know how much fun I have commentating alongside you here, and we'll be back for the next 3 days. So, thank you. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, looking forward to it. See, chat, we're ending peacefully. Hopefully, y'all will be back tomorrow to watch more commentary. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in.